into the evening and during the overnight period, and that will bring some snow to the higher ground areas, even sleet to lower levels as that cold air pushes in. Elsewhere, the showers we've seen throughout today will gradually clear their way off, but we'll see further rain across Northern Ireland. Underneath some of the clearer spells we do have, there is the potential for a patchy frost, particularly across areas of Scotland. Elsewhere, towns and cities around 4 to 6 degrees Celsius. Some brightness first thing, but it is going to be cloudy, particularly for Wales into southwest England as this rain moves in and the cloud building into central and southern areas of England throughout the day. Some sunnier spells developing for the northern half of the UK, still with a scattering of showers, particularly across eastern coastal areas where they could still be wintry, pushing in on quite a brisk breeze, and if you are exposed to that wind throughout the day, it will be feeling closer to freezing. Those showers inland will tend to ease off into Monday evening, still persisting across some northern coastal areas, and the cloud across the southern half of the UK will also begin to push its way off as well. Underneath some of those clearer intervals that develop, though, it is going to be quite a cold night on Monday with the risk of more of a widespread frost, so do just take care of some tender plants. But because of the clear spells that are developing, there will be a good amount of sunshine as we move into Tuesday, and it's looking to be much drier thanks to this ridge of high pressure that's built in. It's only going to be transient, though, because we've got further weather fronts and low pressure that wants to move in for the middle part of the week, so there is the risk that we see some further spells of rain towards Wednesday and Thursday. But our temperatures should slowly begin to climb up a little bit more as well. Bye-bye.
You've probably seen politicians interviewed 1,000 times, but we do it differently. We find out who they really are, we don't shout, we chat, and hopefully we bring a bit of light, not just heat. Did you know Kate Moss?
Apparently.
Do you have a pair of jeans or a pair of jeans?
No, of course I don't. What would I do with them?
My friends are like, oh my God, what's she doing now?
Join me every Sunday at 6 for Gloria Meets, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Monday to Thursday nights on GB News. At 6, it's Dubes & Co. 7 o'clock, Farage. At 8, join Jacob Rees-Mogg. And at 9, Dan Wootton Tonight, followed by Headliners. On TV, radio and online. This is GB News.
First and foremost, I am a GB News fan, and I was before I was working here. Just love the fact that we're asking the questions that a lot of establishment media won't ask.
With a bit of a twist, we not only want to inform you, but we want to keep you entertained.
It's worth the drive because you get in and the team's all ready and waiting, they're itching to go, and it's a proper little family.
GB News is the People's Channel.
It's the audience that makes the programme sing.
We're giving our viewers and our listeners a voice. I see the thousands of your letters, tweets, emails, you name it, coming in.
Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it?
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent you.
It's time for something different. It's time for GB News. I'm very patriotic. I believe in Britain. Our best days lie ahead.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Join us here on GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Join me, Patrick Christie's, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6. We tackle the day's news agenda like you've never seen before. It's high tempo, high octane, the most controversial topics, and the best guests. You will not be able to take your eyes and ears off it. I'm not afraid to ask the questions that you really want answered. 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
GB News has its own late-night paper preview show, Headliners, where comedians take you through the next day's top news stories. You don't have to bother reading the newspaper, we've got it covered for you. Headliners, every night at 11 p.m. and repeated every morning at 5 a.m. We won't send you to sleep like some of the other paper review shows out there. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, on Sunday mornings from 9:30, taking the politicians to task and breaking out of SW1 to see how their decisions are affecting you across the UK. Bursting the Westminster bubble every Sunday morning, only on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain's watching.
Hello, I'm Calvin Robinson. Do not miss my Common Sense Crusade Saturdays at 7 p.m. Join me for some in-depth discussions on faith. Is that not the start of the slippery slope?
It's very much so.
And the big moral questions of the day. I'm baffled.
You've got some nerve.
Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my 2 comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello, good afternoon. It's just coming up to 3 o'clock, but it's not quite 3 o'clock. I'm Nana Akua. This is GB News.
There it is.
Yes, the alarm.
Oh, my God.
What do we do? Help. Yes.
Oh, my God, it's very loud.
It is very loud, isn't it? Is it happening at your house as well? Oh, it's gone off. That's it.
You should have that every time for everyone when it's the time for your show.
Oh, I'd love that. that. Emily, well, that was exciting. It was nice,
that was
nice to share that with you.
I'll be off then.
Nice to share that with you at home as well. Well, welcome on board. Did you enjoy that? But before we get into the show, let's cross over to near the finish line of the London Marathon, because that's what's been happening at Trafalgar Square. Look at that. Yeah. Let's get some... What do you think? I mean, this is... well, my mother is running for us, and that's quite exciting, really.
That is. Oh, she's done it in 3 hours 27 minutes, which sounds extraordinarily fast.
No, that is good, because I did it on the turn of the century, 1999, and because I thought I'll do the one in this century, and I did it in 4 hours and 45.
OK, so a bit slower.
No training whatsoever.
Well, no training. Well, Olivia, I think, has run 600 kilometres in the last few weeks. So she is a proper athlete, it seems.
Well done.
Well, you are too, of course.
I hate running. It's a sport of Satan and it's boring. Thank you very much,
Thank
Emily.
you very much indeed. Have a great show.
And thank you so much. And hello and welcome to you on GB News Live, on TV, online and on digital radio. I'm Nana Akua. And for the next few hours, me and my panel will be taking on some of the big topics hitting the headlines right now. This show is all about opinion. It's mine, it's theirs, and of course it's yours. We'll be debating, discussing, and at times we will disagree, but no one will be cancelled. Now, first up, we're going head-to-head in a clash of minds over the next hour with news presenter and former MEP Martin Daubeny, also former editor of The Labellist Peter Edwards. Then joining me between 4 and 6, author and broadcaster Christine Hamilton, also broadcaster and journalist Danny Kelly. Then stay tuned, because at 5 o'clock in my outside, I've got a mystery guest joining me live in the studio to discuss their recent weight loss, addiction, struggles and reality TV stardom. But before we get started, let's get your latest news headlines.
Good afternoon to you. It's 3:01. I'm Aaron Armstrong in the GB newsroom. Well, as you have just been hearing, or should have been hearing, an alert has been sent out to all of our smartphones. Most people will have received a message like this on their home screen, along with a sound and a vibration for up to 10 seconds, although my friends in Northern Ireland tell me it hasn't arrived there yet. The public have been told they swipe away the message. Drivers, though, are told to ignore it until it's safe to look to their phone. It's all to try and warn us about potentially life-threatening situations like fires, flooding or terror attacks. The Deputy Prime Minister, Oliver Dowden, says it could save people's lives.
It's the case that this has been developed with the National Cyber Security Centre, which forms part of GCHQ. There will be very strict procedures in place for its authorisation, and it will only be used in a situation where your viewers' lives are in danger. I'm determined that there is a very high bar for the usage of this.
The Prime Minister has confirmed British diplomats and their families have been evacuated from Sudan amid escalating violence in the country. Rishi Sunak says UK armed forces completed a complex mission in the capital Khartoum alongside other allies. Hundreds of civilians have died in a violent conflict between the Sudanese army and a rival paramilitary group. The Foreign Secretary, James Cleverly, says the government is continuing to ensure the safety of British nationals who remain in Sudan.
We have taken the decision to temporarily close the embassy and to relocate our embassy staff. That gives us the best opportunity to project our diplomatic support back into Sudan, but we remain absolutely committed to support British nationals in Sudan. We will do so in close coordination with our international partners. But the best thing that we can do to support British nationals, and indeed everyone in Sudan, is push the generals involved in this conflict to bring it to an end, and that will remain the priority of our diplomatic focus in the region.
Diane Abbott's been suspended as a Labour MP pending an investigation for saying Jewish people aren't subjected to racism. In a comment article for The Observer, the former Shadow Health Secretary said Jewish people were subjected to prejudice like Irish or red-headed people, but they didn't experience racism. Jewish Labour MP Dame Margaret Hodge says Diane Abbott's letter was deeply offensive and deeply depressing. Ms Abbott has since withdrawn the remarks and has apologised. A Labour Party spokesperson condemned the comments as deeply offensive and wrong, and the London Mayor, Sadiq Khan, says the comments are unacceptable.
I don't understand how anybody can think that, how anybody could say that, but even worse, write a letter to The Observer to publish that it's right she's apologised. The Labour Party's done the right thing to suspend her at beggar's belief.
The Home Secretary says it's crucial the government has the power to deport migrants without being blocked by the European Court of Human Rights. In the Sunday Telegraph, Suella Braverman said for Britain to be truly sovereign, it needs to be able to decide who enters our territory. This comes after 11 small boats carrying nearly 500 people crossed the British-English Channel yesterday. Liberal Democrat leader Sir Ed Davey says the government isn't doing enough to tackle the issue.
The backlog of asylum applications that have not been processed is 160,000. That's the problem, and this does nothing to solve that. Liberal Democrats want this problem solved, but the government is just being in chaos and can't even do the basics right.
Sir Mo Farah has finished 9th in his final London Marathon with a time of 2 hours and 10 minutes. The race was won by Kenya's Kelvin Kiptum, who smashed the course record to win it in the second fastest marathon time ever. Sifan Hassan won the women's race. Today is set to be the largest London Marathon with at least 45,000 people taking part. Around £60 million is hoped to be raised for charity. 2 new pictures of Prince Louis have been published as he celebrates his 5th birthday today. He's been photographed being pushed around in a wheelbarrow by his mother in the Windsor estate. Louis is expected to accompany his siblings in the procession from Westminster Abbey during the King's coronation next month. This is GB News. More on all of our stories whenever it happens. But for the moment, let's return to Nana.
Hello, good afternoon and welcome to GB News on TV, online and on digital radio. I'm Nana Akua and we are live and active here on GB News. There's loads going on throughout the day. Joining me today for the next 3 hours, me and my panel will be discussing all the hot topics that are hitting the headlines right now. This show is all about opinion. It's mine, it's theirs, and of course it's yours. We'll be debating, discussing, and at times we will disagree, but no one will be cancelled. So joining me today, first at 4 o'clock, we go head to head. And joining me this hour will be GB News presenter and contributor Martin Dorbley, and also former editor of the Labour List, Peter Edwards. Now, coming up on today's head-to-head, only a few minutes ago, we all heard the government's emergency alert test for our phones. Millions received a message from their mobiles along with the sound and vibration for up to 10 seconds. And even if they were placed on silent, this would still happen. So in your view, is this an invasion of privacy, or is it necessary? Labour MP Diane Abbott has been suspended after suggesting that Jewish people do not face racism. In a letter to The Observer, the Labour MP wrote, "It is true that many types of white people with points of difference such as redheads can experience this prejudice, but they are not all their lives subject to racism." The Labour MP has since apologised for the remarks on Twitter. We're discussing that, plus Dominic Raab resigned from his post as Deputy Prime Minister on Friday following bullying allegations. He now faces a campaign to sack him as an MP. In his resignation letter, Dominic Raab accused some civil servants of plotting against him. So, was he ousted? Should he have gone? Secretary Suella Braverman has also suggested that she could ignore European judges to start deportation flights through Rwanda, and she's prepared to face down her critics this week. Writing for The Telegraph, Suella said that we must stop the boats. It is the express wish of the British people. So should the government ignore the European courts? And of course today, it's St George's Day. So I'll be asking whether you should be proud to be English. That's on the way in the next hour. As ever, tell me what you think on everything we're discussing. You can email gbviews@gbnews.uk or tweet me at gbnews. So, welcome aboard if you just tuned in. As you heard, of course, Emily and I a few moments ago, our devices went off with the beep, beep, beep at 3 p.m. We were warned, although what better time to do something bad if it's supposed to be a sort of, everyone knows about it and it's not a real thing. It was, of course, the government's emergency alert test. Now, the message appeared on the home screens of our phones. It may have appeared on yours. Not unless you switched off the notifications. I think it's as simple as that. There was a vibration as well. It lasted for about 10 seconds. That was pretty much it. It was pretty bit of a damn squid, people. Even the phones and tablets that were on silent weren't exempt. So speaking to GB News today, the new Deputy Prime Minister, Oliver Dowden, said that the system will be used in life-threatening emergencies.
It's the case that this has been developed with the National Cyber Security Centre, which forms part of GCHQ. There will be very strict procedures in place for its authorisation, and it will only be used in a situation where your viewers' lives are in danger. I'm determined that there is a very high bar for the usage of this.
Well, that's great. Let's hope that those who are pressing the buttons or whatever instigating it are also on the same page. But is this alert an invasion of our privacy? A lot of people think it is necessary. Others will believe that it's actually not that great. Let's get started. Welcome again to my panel. Former editor of The Labourist, Peter Edwards, and GB News contributor and former Brexit Party MEP, Martin Daubney. Right, so I'm going to start with you, Peter, because I'm suspecting, are you in support of this alarm system? Is it a good thing or a bad thing? What's your view?
I think it's a good thing. I don't feel it's an invasion of privacy. It will help to keep us all safer. It's obviously it doesn't protect against everything, but it spreads awareness of certain dangers. I think Oliver Dowden, effectively Deputy Prime Minister, struck a fairly cautious note, used that phrase, a high bar for it to be used. So it's not going to be used too often because we don't want to spread anxiety. But bearing in mind that terrorist attacks have often been in very crowded places like Manchester Arena, in recent years, it seems a sensible thing to bring in.
It's interesting you bring that up because when that happened, I don't think they knew what they were doing then. That was a bit of a farce, wasn't it? So I don't know whether they would have even known to press the alarm in time. Martin, what do you think?
Yeah, it's a solution to a problem that doesn't exist. In countries where they have hurricanes, proper wildfires, extreme weather, tsunamis, perhaps. But in Britain, you barely struggle to shake a plate off a wall during an earthquake. We don't get wildfires. If we get a bit of rain, then we can look out the window and see it. This notion we need to be told by the state that unless you get a beep on your phone, you're going to sit there and passively die is cretinous. And actually, I think it's an extension of a rotten mindset, a totalitarian mindset we saw step in during lockdowns. The state is overreaching, telling us what to do, and people are becoming more bovine and accepting that they have to be told by the state what to do or they cannot function. And that's where I think the real problem is. I muted mine, I went in and turned off my alerts. I didn't get it, and I urge everyone to do the same. The fact
Why,
that...
though? I mean, like Peter's suggesting that if there's a big incident, OK, so wild weather, that is one thing, although I don't know whether they're trying to scare us into thinking the climate is changing, get ready for... I don't know, but...
I think that is a part of it, this idea that a catastrophe is but a heartbeat away, I think is a crucial part of what the government want us to believe. As far as terrorism goes, as I understand it, they wouldn't put an alert out during a terrorist incident in case it alerted the terrorists, that they've been rumbled, as it were. So I think it's a complete and utter overreach, and we don't need it. It has no place in a free society.
What about, look, Peter, what about, for example, we know that Matt Hancock, when it came to the COVID thing, they created a system to deliberately scare people more so that we would be submissive. And is Martin's point actually quite valid, that this is a way of kind of making us more submissive as we became that way during COVID?
No, I disagree. So first of all, Matt Hancock just used very loose and inappropriate language on WhatsApp during the pandemic, which wasn't the right thing to do. But
No, but the point there I'm making is that they deliberately used alarmist ideology, in a sense, to get people to be scared so that we'd participate.
Yeah, I wouldn't call it ideology, but you're right, Matt Hancock did refer on a WhatsApp... Look, we're agreeing. Matt Hancock did refer on a WhatsApp to, I think, scaring the pants off people or something similar like that. Clearly a throwaway remark and not a good one at all. I'd imagine, just as with fire and Coast Guard and terrorism, it's not going to be politicians in operational control. It will be qualified individuals.
I just had a message from somebody, one of my friends, who said that even though her phone was ready, nothing happened on her phone. Nothing happened on her phone.
Yeah, and I think qualified experts is what got us into the mess in COVID. I mean, we trusted experts, proved to be completely wrong. Everything fell apart from epidemiology to the vaccines and all the rest of it. And so the idea that we need to be spoon-fed our survival. So if you don't change this, then, like I say, you're going to sit there like a frog in a pan and boil to death.
What about, OK, so we are getting this sort of nuclear threat as well, in a sense, aren't we, really? We've had Vladimir Putin making threats towards this country with regard to nuclear strikes. And, of course, we know that he's apparently building Satan 2, or whatever he's calling it. Is this not? Do you think that perhaps they're worried about that?
Well, if the 4-minute warning came, I could think of far more fun things to do than sit around worrying about my phone alerts. So I think in the case of a nuclear war, it'd be over so quick. And what difference would an alert make?
Well, I don't know. I mean, is there an argument for that, Peter, at all, with regard to nuclear attacks and things like that?
Well, thankfully, we're not in the realms of a nuclear war, and I'm not sure if that was a remark in jest.
Well, you might laugh.
Hold on, you got to let me finish the answer. Tell me I'm wrong. Right. We're not on the brink of nuclear war, and I'm sure your viewers realise we're not on the brink of nuclear war. Nuclear war... Let's not talk about nuclear war.
Why? I've asked the question. You're going to answer it.
We're not in that situation.
Yeah, but what I'm saying is, do you think that they are thinking ahead and getting us prepared for potentially any form of war? I mean, look, there used to be war sirens, so it's not funny. This could be the modern-day version of a war siren. Do you not think that they are thinking about that as well?
I think we've got to be sober about these things. You know, Britain hasn't had a war on its own borders for several decades, since World War II. But I think there is a place... clearly, it's not going to be... It's less likely to be for extreme weather events of the like you get in America, where there seem to be frequent tornadoes. So I think that the usage is going to be a bit different, and I'd imagine it's going to be refined over time. But let me give you a couple of quick examples. My first newspaper job was in Cumbria. In the last 20 years, there's been several extremely dangerous floods in Cumbria and terribly a mass shooting as well. So I think that's why I treat these things in a fairly sober manner. Anything that helps us stay safe, I think, is a good thing.
But then when I mentioned war, you said, we're not on the brink of that, and that would be something that would, in a sense, keep us safe. You don't think that's a possibility? Am I being extremist?
No, I just think it's an extension of the fact that we seem to rely on our phones for everything. Like, we can't do anything without our phones. We got by for millennia without this. And I do think it is just more scare and shock tactics. The government wants to keep us in a state of fear because when we're scared, we're easy to control. And when we're easy to control, then we just obey. And I'm surprised that someone from the left is so kind of subservient to a Tory policy to scare the heck out of us. Why don't we push back against totalitarian control? That's what got us into the mess during lockdown, when we all kind of lamely just followed orders.
Well, let me answer that question. So first of all, I think party politics doesn't have to touch everything. You know, you called it a Tory policy, but I'd be very surprised if an incoming Labour government scrapped it, but we'll wait and see what they say. But I really don't believe party politics has to touch everything, and I think the kind of viewers might get a bit frustrated if that did. But I don't think it's about control. What is wrong with trying innovations that might keep us safer?
Well, what is wrong with them, indeed? Potentially it may keep us safer, maybe it won't. Maybe it's a way, as a land grab on our mobile phones and a whole sort of... But apparently there's no data collection within it, it just comes straight to your phone. It's done in other countries as well. But what's your views? GBviews at gbnews.uk, or tweet me at GBnews. Come on, keep those thoughts coming. I'll read your messages throughout the show. But let's move on to this next story that really caught my eye, and for all the wrong reasons. Diane Abbott. She's been suspended as a Labour MP after suggesting that Jewish people do not experience racism. Now, in a letter for The Observer, the Labour MP wrote, it is true that many types of people, of white people with points of difference, such as redheads, can experience this prejudice, but they are not all their lives subject to racism. She has since disassociated herself from the remarks in the tweet, apologising for her comments, and in response to the Diane Abbott comments, Labour spokesperson said that the Labour Party completely condemns these comments, which are deeply offensive and wrong. So still with me is former editor of The Labour List, Peter Edwards, and GB News contributor and former Brexit Party MEP, Martin Daubney. Martin.
Diane Abbott is a disgusting racist and should be sacked today. The fact of the matter is, removing the whip is not enough. No, she constantly uses racism as a way of dividing Britain. And here's the real point. Why is it that the liberal left, the Labour Party in particular, the hard left, don't think anti-Semitism is real racism? They just don't. They seem to have this thing that because they're white, because they're privileged, although they weren't very privileged during the Holocaust, it doesn't count. This free Palestine, Jewish people are privileged nonsense is a stain on the Labour Party. And there are only two political parties ever to have been investigated for racism in the UK. It's the Labour Party and the National Front. The Labour Party today are on the same page as the National Front.
Diane Abbott, in her defence, would say that she is not a racist and that
well, she is.
Simply,
she clearly is.
This is what she would say. She's not here to defend herself. So, you know, I'm trying to look on. I'm trying to look on.
But her comments are self-evident.
Well, even she knows. I mean, even she's accepted that they were wrong.
If anybody else had done that, if anybody in the Conservative Party had done anything similar, the Labour Party would be on their high horse now, demanding blood before the day is out. Why should Diane Abbott get away with it? What, because she's black?
I don't think Diane Abbott is going to get away with it, and I think the Labour Party have come down on her like a ton of bricks. But my thing is the fact that she thought that it was OK to actually write this down. This is a considered thing that was thought out, and I just find it absolutely abhorrent. What do you think, Peter?
I think her comments were offensive and completely wrong, and I kind of want to say that explicitly. I'm also baffled by them. I mean, Dame Margaret Hodge, a veteran MP, said she found them offensive, but also found them depressing. And I can
that is embarrassing.
I can understand that, because how could someone publish something like this? But I don't agree entirely with what Martin said, because, as you rightly pointed out, the Labour Party has acted very quickly, when it's not always done that in recent years, acted very quickly to suspend Diane Abbott. There'll now be a disciplinary process. So I think the Labour Party is, like all political parties, ever vigilant about racism. Diane Abbott...
Really? Hang on, wait. You said
they suspended her immediately.
The reason they suspended her immediately is because they were so slow and dragging their feet on Jeremy Corbyn. Let's think about this. If Labour had won the election in 2019, the Prime Minister and the Home Secretary are anti-Semites who've lost the whip, both of them. They'd have been the number one and number two people in Britain. That is a stain on the Labour Party, and unless the Labour Party kick these people out of the party and actually deal with anti-Semitism, why should a single Jewish person vote for the Labour Party? Answer me that.
So I wouldn't describe Diane Abbott as a racist. I think what she said was wrong and really foolish and really unpleasant, and she apologised within hours. So I'm not at all, for 1 minute, defending what she said. She has suffered racism throughout her working life.
So? What's that got to do with it?
No, I just want to have a balance.
She should know better than that, then, if anything.
Yeah, she should know better, absolutely. And I think that's why we are so depressed by this. But I feel at a time when there is a kind of degree of unanimity between me and you and across politics, that these comments are completely wrong. Martin's being very kind of inflammatory, which is not necessary. We all agree what Diane Abbott said was completely wrong.
But I think what Martin's referring to is the actual sort of ethos within the Labour Party, where this is actually enabled to...
Isn't it funny as well how when you criticise blatant racism, I'm the one who's being inflammatory. She's the one who compared being ginger to the Holocaust, and I'm being inflammatory? Let's get a grip. Now, this is a serious issue, and hats off to the Labour Party, they've dealt with it quickly, but they've got to kick her out of the party. If they're serious about dealing with this anti-Semitism in their party, they've got to... Keir Starmer's now got to show his mettle.
Well, I mean, and on that point, I mean, as though there are different layers, you can be more racist or less racist. Racism is racism, so you can't be more or less. You either are or you aren't. Now, listen, keep your thoughts coming. We're earlier discussing the government's new emergency alert test. Let's see what you've been saying. Ian says the alert didn't happen for me. Yeah, some people are saying that as well. The alarm came in handy as my roast potatoes were burning. Ellie says, oh, mine went off 3 minutes after everyone else's. I'm thinking favouritism. See, they can't even get that right. Sandy says the alarm test didn't work for us. Only one of my family got the alarm. Russell says well over 10 minutes later, and not a thing. I thought it was a bit early, actually, because I was looking on the thing there, but so much for the alarm test, and loads of people saying all sorts of things about that. Keep your thoughts coming with regards to Diane Abbott as well. We'll read some of those. You're with me. I'm Nana Akua. This is GBNews on TV, online and on digital radio. Coming up, I'll be asking whether Dominic Raab was ousted as Deputy Prime Minister. Send me your thoughts. Don't go anywhere.
It's all about family, being in people's living rooms, all the interaction and getting to know who our viewers and listeners are.
When I was young, my dad used to say, Nana, stop arguing. I wanted an outlet that would enable me to give my opinion.
People are going through a really hard time right now, and I know that you don't feel like you're being listened to by the establishment.
I came to GB News because it's the People's Channel, and I want the audience to have their say on the events of the day.
We're dynamic. We do something different. Democracy shows that the wisdom of the nation is in its people.
I get to travel to find out what the story is from a personal perspective.
The British people aren't fools. We know when we're not being told the full story.
We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this.
It's the best country in the world.
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent your views.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
So Dubes & Co, we tackle the issues of the day with real, robust debate, both sides of the fence, battling it out with me in the middle with my forthright opinions and views. And often really interesting things happen because you start with a position and then by the end of the debate you find actually, well, I might not have thought about that one.
What we need in this country is 2 new political parties.
You should maybe think about doing a 2024 calendar. I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm keeping you company right through until 7 o'clock this evening.
GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's watching.
Start the day with GB News.
We catch up on all the big stories you didn't hear the night before.
And take a look at what the world's talking about this morning. That's right, Monday to Thursdays from 6 o'clock. It's Breakfast with Eamon and Isabel.
Straight after breakfast, join us, Bev Turner and Andrew Pearce. We're going to take you through till noon.
We'll be tackling the big topics of the day, including the things that the other channels just won't talk about. If it's happening here. Wake up to mornings on GB News, the People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
I'm Simon Evans. Join me on GB News for Headliners at 11 p.m.
What's the scoop?
I'll be joined by 2 of the country's top comedians.
That's right.
As we take a look at tomorrow's newspapers tonight.
We're going to get into trouble.
If it's a big story, we'll be covering it.
Spill some tea on him.
There we go.
But we'll also have some fun.
I wouldn't stick up a bank.
My father didn't love me. So anyway.
Headliners every night from 11 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel. Saturday nights on GB News.
From 6 p.m, I'll give you my unique take on the world today.
Then at 7, it's me, Calvin Robinson, with my Common Sense Crusade.
New to GB News is the Saturday 5.
5 times the opinion. Join us every Saturday from 8 p.m. as we debate the week's stories.
With us 4, plus a special guest.
And at 9, of course, it's Mark Dolan Tonight.
Saturday nights on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello, good afternoon. It's just coming up to 26 minutes after 3 o'clock. This is GB News on TV, online and on digital radio. Now, we'll talk about Dominic Raab, because he resigned as the Deputy Prime Minister on Friday following an official inquiry that found that he bullied civil servants by acting in an intimidating and aggressive manner. Now, in his resignation letter, he commented on the low threshold for bullying, and the former Deputy Prime Minister launched an attack on activist civil servants who he claimed were trying to block the work of government. So Raab was ousted from the job. Do you think he was ousted? What do you think? With me now to discuss that, former editor of The Labour is Peter Edwards and GB News contributor and Brexit Party MEP Martin Daubney. Right, Peter, Dominic Raab, he's obviously gone now from his post, although he will be on the backbenches. What's your view on what happened to him?
Well, it's been a terrible week for Dominic Raab, and he seems to have done all he can to make it worse. And I'm really wary of kind of civil service rhetoric being lumped in by Dominic Raab and his supporters. There was an independent barrister, qualified person who upheld 2 of the allegations and I think dismissed around 6 or 7 others, but upheld 2, used the phrase an abuse or misuse of power in Dominic Raab's conduct. So Dominic Raab was found by an independent inquiry to be in the wrong. He said he was going to resign if it found against him. He did resign, and then when he vacillated briefly and perhaps contemplated not resigning, Prime Minister's office made clear he'd be sacked anyway. It feels kind of like an open and shut case.
Well, what about, what about the fact that some of the claims were, some of the things were 4.5 to 2.5 years old, which wouldn't be acceptable in any employment tribunal at all, and that all the claims were actually put forward on the same day, so there was obviously a concerted, coordinated attempt to get everything together all at the same time. That was obviously an element of collusion there. And then with the discussion about the tomato, which somebody claimed he threw a tomato, that wasn't true at all. And that person who said that got in trouble.
Well, he didn't resign because of the tomato allegations, as I understand it.
But what I'm saying is that the collection of evidence you have in front of you suggests that some of the things that were being said weren't actually true, and there was a concerted, coordinated effort.
Well, yeah, you used the word collusion, which I wouldn't use, but clearly if the complaints go in...
exactly the same day, all of them together.
On the same day, the complainants might have been talking to each other, which I think they're entitled to do. I think if someone suffered a wrong and you find a colleague who's also suffered a wrong, there's nothing problematic about sharing your experiences. And remember, you know, we've had an independent person sorting out allegations that are proven, those are not proven, and that person, Adam Tolley, KC, has looked at the evidence and made a judgment. So I think we can strip out a lot of the other points about the dates and the tomato and so on. The only thing I perhaps would accept there is a need for change on is the timeline, because it's been incredibly slow. And in other forms of workplace disputes, like tribunals, they get to the finishing line a lot quicker.
Well, the threshold of bullying has certainly changed since Gordon Brown's day. Now, here's a guy who used to throw cola cans, newspapers, biros, paper, throw abuse, walk out while civil servants were talking, and yet he's rolled out every time that we need a fresh lecture on Brexit or immigration or climate change or whatever. You know, so certainly the threshold was definitely different back in the day when Labour were in control. And now it seems that hurting somebody's feelings is enough. The people are anonymous, isn't that nice? You know, you can get away with making claims anonymously. They came in all at the same time. And in terms of him being abrasive, yeah, he's a brusque, abrasive, no-nonsense sort of fella. Isn't that, though, what's useful sometimes in being successful? And how would politicians like Maggie Thatcher or Winston Churchill have survived in an era? You know, we'll fight them on the beaches, will be considered hate speech. You know, the lady's not for turning. How dare you, judge my gender? We've gone so far down this rabbit hole now of people being offended equates to bullying that I think we're going to have an impotent, inactive government. Who's going to want those jobs? If you can't say to somebody, hang on a minute, Spanish troops aren't allowed on the island of Gibraltar in the final hours of Brexit, that's a clear red line. A foreign occupation, they put somebody to one side because they wouldn't do that. They're incompetent and deserve to have strips torn off them. And that constitutes bullying. Incompetence and incompetence being pointed out is an essential part of governance. It's an essential part of any business. And how would these people survive for 5 minutes in the real world on a building site or in an army barracks, for example?
Peter?
Well, I actually think the rules that apply in different workplaces should apply in the civil service as well. I mean, I think Martin is so sort of histrionic and overwrought, it detracts from the case he's trying to make. Whether you agree with the political choices by either Tony Blair or Margaret Thatcher, they were both, by repute, quite sensible and calm and courteous to deal with, whether you agree with them or not. And this other point about anonymity, well, civil servants also have no public profile when they're getting slagged off by politicians. And it was David Cameron, remember, who described, I think, civil servants as the enemies of enterprise. So in bad times, civil servants don't have a public profile, and when they get an element of justice several years after the event, they also don't have a profile. So again, I think going down the cul-de-sac of anonymity is a total nonsense. So you would ignore Dominic Raab's complaints totally and say that because this one person, Tolley, looked at it and said it was that's it? Because I, as far as I can see, he was sort of saying that, in my understanding of what he was saying, was kind of that it wasn't really he hadn't been that bad, but ultimately his behaviour wasn't acceptable. Well, that's a good point. So Adam Tolley said an abuse or misuse of power, and he cited a particular example of Dominic Raab putting a hand towards someone's face when he'd had enough of them talking, which seems, and bear in mind that's not just from a colleague, but someone who's one of the most powerful people in the country. So I could understand if someone is shoving their hand in your face, that would be quite rude and also seen as quite dominating. I think Richie... What's wrong with that, Peter? There's a hand in Peter's face right now. And this would be bullying. If I did, no, Peter, stop talking. This is bullying. My hand is in your face. I've got no... Context is important because you're not my boss, and while you do have a big audience, you're not one of the four most powerful people in the United Kingdom. What's that got to do with it? Because I think the power dynamics of politics and the top of government are very different. So if I was talking and my boss went like this to me, I would not find that... Is that no? Is that enough for me to be sort of an example of my bullying? If that's the best example you can give of bullying, you've got to admit the bar is pretty low. Well, I wouldn't say that. But he's given an example. He's giving that as an example. And let me answer. So remember, he used the phrase "an abuse of misuse of power," and the hand in the face claim is not necessarily seen as the strongest example. There are lots of others, and he uses the word, I think, humiliation repeatedly in his report as well. But look, let's try and be reasonable. Rishi Sunak, who, although I don't agree with politically, is a fairly calm and cautious person. He wrote back, and he'd obviously made it clear to Rob he'd be sacked if he didn't quit, but he wrote back saying there were flaws in the timeline. Now, to me, that doesn't detract from the sincerity of the complainants, but the timeline was very slow, wasn't it? And I imagine that will be reformed.
I just think it's kind of reflective of a kind of cotton wool world we seem to be increasingly moving towards. A lot of these people are very senior civil servants. It's not.
It wasn't even that. Dominic said made the point that it wasn't actually the junior civil servants who a lot of them came to him and said, "Look, we really like working with you." It was actually the more senior ones, which I
everyone's allowed to write.
But because it's the senior ones, I'd suggest that there's more sensitive.
Yeah. So it's interesting that point because we all thought, oh, this would be young millennial snowflakes. It wasn't that. It's actually people who know how to play the system.
Right.
And it's people who were oftentimes put in place by Tony Blair, and the people who are against the government's policies certainly on Brexit, certainly on immigration, and absolutely on things like immigration and deporting to Rwanda. If you speak to Tory MPs, they say all the time that the blob is a huge barrier to governance. And when they can weaponise words to have senior ministers removed, isn't it funny how it's like Priti Patel, Dominic Raab, Boris Johnson of a party. There seems to be a coincidence
those that seem to
people with hard right or at least right-wing views seem to be the ones getting the chop. And I fear it is coordinated next with Suella Braverman.
Well, they're after her next. Well, listen, we'll come back on that. We'll have a chat about it. Let's have a quick look at what you've been saying. You're with me. I'm Nana Akua. This is GB News. Let's see what your thoughts were on this. Joining me right now, Martin Daubney and also Peter Edwards. Stay tuned. There's loads more still to come. Before the break, we were discussing Diana Abbott's suspension. Let's have a quick look at what you've been saying. Mike says Diana Abbott's comments teach us that the Labour Party has not dealt with anti-Semitism and racism, but merely swept it under the carpet. Well, they can't afford to do that, can they? William says the Labour Party acted quickly to shut down this public display of anti-Semitism, but Diana Abbott's views and associations have been long known. Linda says she obviously thinks it's OK to say it in those circumstances. An apology means nothing and is only said to save a person's skin. Barbara says Diana Abbott should be kicked out of the Labour Party. I'm with you all the way. Keep those views coming. You're with me. I'm Nana Akua. This is GB News on TV, online and on digital radio. On the way, we'll be discussing Suella Braverman challenging the European courts and whether you should be proud to be English.
Hi there, it is 3:35. I'm Aaron Armstrong in the GB Newsroom. An alert's been heard on most smartphones across the UK as part of a government trial, although not everyone received the message as planned. Some received it early. People have been told at 3 p.m. they would get the message on their home screen along with that sound and vibration for up to 10 seconds. It is intended to warn people about life-threatening situations such as fires, flooding or terror attacks. Rishi Sunak says UK armed forces have completed a complex evacuation of British diplomats and their families from Sudan after a significant escalation of violence. The Prime Minister confirmed work is continuing to ensure the safety of British nationals who remain there. The operation, involving more than 1,200 military personnel, was completed alongside the United States, France and other allies. At least 413 civilians have been killed as the Sudanese army battle against a rival paramilitary force for control. Diana Abbott's been suspended as a Labour MP pending an investigation for saying Jewish people are not subjected to racism. In a letter for the Observer newspaper, the former Shadow Health Secretary said many types of white people with points of difference, like Irish, Jewish or red-headed people, are subjected to prejudice, but they don't experience racism. Ms Abbott has since withdrawn the remarks and apologised for any offence caused. A Labour Party spokesman has condemned the comments as deeply offensive and wrong. TV online, DAB and TuneIn Radio, this is GB News. Now, back to Nana.
Thank you so much, Aaron. Lots more still to come. At 4, I'll be giving you my take on Diana Abbott's suspension from the Labour Party. You won't want to miss that. Then on the way, we'll be discussing Suella Braverman's Rwanda flight plans. You don't want to miss that either. Stay tuned.
I joined GB News because I was sick and tired of not hearing my views being represented, not just mine, but so many people that I knew and spoke to.
I just couldn't get my voice out there. I couldn't say anything, I couldn't do anything. Whatever the narrative was, I kind of had to follow it.
GB News is there to provide a voice for those who have been ignored by the establishment media. We think different things, we've got a different style.
GB News is here to be optimistic and positive about the future.
It's real kind of dynamic and flowing, with the audience very much at the heart of it, like a big family.
Here at GB News, we talk about the things that matter to you.
Hearing the voices from right across our towns and cities, especially our towns.
All sides of the argument represented with a heavy dose of opinion.
We're on a mission here to make a difference.
And the GB News family really is here for you, and whatever time of day you can watch or listen.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Westminster is going around in ever-decreasing circles, followed by the media. Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it? Join me at 7 p.m, Mondays to Thursdays on Farage, here on GB News. We will have open, rational debate. We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this. Join us here on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain is watching.
You've probably seen politicians interviewed 1,000 times, but we do it differently. We find out who they really are, we don't shout, we chat, and hopefully we bring a bit of light, not just heat.
Did you know Kate Moss?
Apparently.
Do you have a pair of jeans or a pair of jeans?
No, of course I don't. What would I do with them?
My friends are like, oh my God, what's she doing now?
Join me every Sunday at 6 for Gloria Meets, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Jacob Rees-Mogg, the Member of Parliament for North East Somerset and a former government minister. For years, I've walked the corridors of power in both Westminster and the City of London. We need to have the arguments, the discussions on how we make it better.
Crop failures, famine, war, suffering on a scale completely unimaginable.
We are putting the cart before the horse. As Charles I said at the scaffold, he was the true defender of liberty.
Yeah, I've completely derailed the conversation.
Join me Monday to Thursday at 8 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
New to GB News is the Saturday 5.
Join us every Saturday from 8 p.m. as we debate the week's stories.
Right, folks, that was a spicy one, wasn't it?
With us four, plus a special guest.
Sometimes she has to stick her foot in it. Sometimes she has to say things as they are.
Sometimes I think we should keep the refugees and send the pensioners to Rwanda. Then we'd be in a much better state.
Well, Benjamin, that is...
The Saturday 5. Saturday nights from 8.
Only on GB News, the People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon, welcome. This is GB News. We are the People's Channel. I'm Nana Akua. We're live on TV, online and on digital radio. Now, before the break, we were talking about Dominic Raab's resignation. Lots of you are still talking about that, so let's see what you're saying. Margaret says, Dominic is 100% right. Witnessed plenty when working as a civil servant. Their work ethic was rock bottom, and if they are competent and intelligent, you were bullied if they aren't by colleagues for simply having brains and getting the job done. Oh, really? Wow. Jane says Raab was set up. They've been after him for quite a time. Who's next on the list, on the hit list? He was only doing his job. Pat says, what happened to grievance procedures? Does that all go out of the window when it becomes a political opportunity to get rid of a political enemy? Why did it all go public? It should have been sorted in-house. Well, exactly. What? It's ironic, isn't it, that the people who are supposed to be looking after us and making sure we're organised are so disorganised themselves. I mean, they don't even have a proper procedure to deal with grievances like this, so it's all a bit ridiculous. But keep your thoughts coming. Let's move on to this story that caught my eye now. Of course, Home Secretary Suella Braverman is set to ignore the European judges in an attempt to kickstart the deportation flights to Rwanda. Now, she is hoping to give the government necessary powers to disregard temporary injunctions issued by the European Court of Human Rights that have prevented planes from taking off. And of course, this all comes as the illegal migrations bill, which is odd the way they said that, doesn't it? It makes it sound like the bill is illegal. But it's the illegal migrations bill returns to the Commons for its final reporting stage this week. But Should Suella Braverman be challenging the European courts? Well, joining me to discuss that is former editor of The Labourist Peter Edwards and GBNews contributor and former Brexit Party MEP Martin Daubney. Martin, I'm going to start with you. What do you make of this story?
Yeah, I think Suella is not only correct to do this, but she has to do this for the electoral survival and even perhaps the political future of the Conservative Party. Time and time again, the electorate voted to take back control of our borders. It's got worse. For 13 years, it's got worse, both legal and illegal immigration. But the one that's the high-profile one, the visible one, of course, is illegal immigration. We're a laughingstock in the world. And when those of us who gave up our careers to go to Brussels to get us out of the European Union would have liked to have seen, actually, the Council of Europe as a part of that equation, because, of course, the European Court of Human Rights isn't a part of the European Union, it's part of the Council of Europe. That wasn't voted on. So it still gives Strasbourg the potential to throw a spanner in the works, which, of course, Remainer-friendly lawyers and QCs know in Britain. So do the charities, so do the NGOs, so do the Labour Party, so do Liberal Democrats, so do the Green Party, so do all the opponents of the electorate, the voters, once again have been trampled on. And the Conservatives are talking tough. They've been talking tough for years. Are they actually going to do it this time? Will there be another legal challenge? Will it be voted down in the Lords, as we saw time and again with Brexit? Most probably. But they have to be seen to be doing something, otherwise the party's finished.
Well, it's almost like an industry, isn't it, this immigration business? A business, all these different factions seem to have an interest in it. So you've got, as Martin pointed out, all the different elements who all seem to have some sort of something to gain potentially in it. What's your thoughts?
Well, you call it a business, but
I think it does feel like a business. You've got smugglers, you've got all the different aspects of it that are almost
You've got to give me more than 2
flourishing
words before you interrupt me.
No, you said I called it a business, so I'm just explaining.
Yeah, you call it a business, but I believe...
Industry.
You call it a business.
I called it an industry.
You're answering your own questions.
Industry. Carry on.
You call it an industry, but I believe in the right to challenge things under law if you think there's been an unfairness. I think Martin, his answer, unwittingly, really gave the game away, which is when he talked about the electoral survival of the Conservative Party, which is exactly right. It is about this, because it's another pathetic cave-in by the government's Tory backbenchers who are not representative of the country at large. And I tell you one other thing, when we talk about public will, especially after the referendum, when there was a 52-48 result, no mainstream British party has been elected in this country on the basis of pulling out from the European Convention on Human Rights. So there is no public support at this stage for doing so.
Really? You don't think there is?
Well, there's huge public support for stopping the dinghies. Absolutely. It's the #1 issue on doorsteps in the Red Wall. And the Tory party, you are right, we agree on the fact that this is about political survival. But it has to be about action, not just cheap talk. We've had years and years of cheap talk and no action. It's getting worse. You know, we're going to see, I think, way over 100,000 this year, maybe even double that.
But listen, once we get out of the ECHR, will something really happen? I mean, you know, we keep getting, let's get out of the EU, we got out of that, and then they spent time arguing, so nothing's happened there. Either Brexit has been stalled, or the actual developments and positive things that could have come out of it haven't come out because they've taken so long.
Yeah.
Won't this just be another thing that then we have our own litigious system that is stopping the process?
Yes, what this is about, it's not about breaking international law, it's about fettling domestic law so it has supremacy, or the ability to opt out of or supersede the ECHR ruling on the blocking of flights. And I do expect this will get checked. It'll probably get through Parliament, but the Lords will be the big battle. The Lords will go against this. I think we're going to be on another headlong charge, just like we're over and over again with Brexit. I don't think anyone's got to go down without a fight. And by the way, there's a major loophole in this even, and that is if you can prove your life is in danger, you won't be able to be deported anyway. Well, everyone's going to say their life is in danger. It's an obvious thing.
We're fighting against ourselves, though, because if we get out of the EHCR, we will then have our own legal system to deal with. So they'll have our own lawyers and all that kind of thing stopping. We've got, like I said, it's an industry.
Yeah.
So it's not just getting out of there, because we've got all these refugee charities and we've got all these lawyers who are getting on the bandwagon of all of this as well.
Yeah, you know, lawyers in the bandwagon might just be called, like, justice and the rule of law. But I think, again, although we've got entirely different perspectives, Martin has alluded to why this is happening, because first of all, it wasn't in the original Tory plan. It's an amendment to the bill, i.e. they're reacting to political pressure from their own backbenchers. And then, as Martin, maybe the sole thing we agree on is it might not happen because of the, and I believe it's a good thing, the right to challenge decisions if your life is at risk in another country. So why is the government pressing ahead with a bill amendment which might be voted down the Lords, and then even if it's passed, might be futile anyway? Because it's a a craven collapse to its own backbenchers. It's not born out of a genuine attempt to tackle the small business crisis.
I don't think it's just a backbench thing, although I agree that is a part of it. It's listening to the electorate. Now, if you knock on a door in Ashfield or Mansfield or Stoke-on-Trent, they will tell you they want this to happen. And these are people that, if they don't vote for the Conservative Party, they're going to get wiped out. And these are people that the Labour Party actually should be courting. So the Labour Party are just kind of sitting in the corner and keeping quiet and hoping this issue goes away. If they actually got tough on illegal immigration themselves, then they'd be able to surpass all of this and take those votes, hoover them up. But they're not. They're staying quiet. And I think the longer Labour don't have a position, the bigger a problem it is for Starmer.
And I know you've got to move on to another story, but Yvette Cooper has laid out what Labour would do. So, for example...
Refugees welcome is a little sign she held up.
Can't keep interrupting people just because I have a different opinion.
No, he's just making a point, but carry on.
Yeah, OK, so Labour has said it put more money into tackling the backlog because there's so many people accommodated in very unsanitary and unpleasant centres waiting processing, and they'd establish a new cross-border force to... because we all accept there's a problem and there's a risk of criminality, and also said we'd have closer cooperation with France, which is one of the things the Tories came round to. Labour have been saying for about 2 or 3 years, let's have closer cooperation with France. Previous Tory Prime Ministers said, oh, no, wicked French, we don't want to be friends with them after Brexit. Liz Truss, are the French a friend or a foe, or we can't decide. Richie Sunak is very ideological, but he also has a common sense and pragmatic streak to him, has now come around to Labour view that you should have closer cooperation with France, because when they're at the other end of the channel, how can you achieve anything without cooperating with Macron?
Well, I don't... You call that a Labour view. I don't think that's a Labour view. I think it's just a common sense view that it's wise to be friends with
it is common
allies
sense, absolutely.
Either side.
Yeah, but how many countless millions have we given to France and it's just... the problem hasn't gone away. In fact, it's worsened. So, you know, is the will there to stop people leaving? Why would the French want to stop people leaving France? I mean, you know, politically and economically and in terms of the electorate, if the French police were seen to blockade, you know, these economic migrants mostly and keep them in France, how would that wash with the French electorate?
Well, the migrant camps in France pose a legal and a health and a social issue and a political issue for the French government as well. So I think that's why there is now belatedly some agreement, because although we've got entirely different views on this debate, Macron and Sunak agree that, you know, when humans are being killed at sea, that situation cannot sustain.
They take that journey willingly and they're paying a lot of money to do it. But they are already safe in France,
They don't deserve
Peter.
to die.
Nobody deserves to die.
I agree with that.
Nobody's saying that anyone deserves to die, but they are safe in France, where they won't die if they stay in France, where they're taking a big risk and spending a lot of money doing it. So why? I mean, you know. Anyway, keep your thoughts coming. We love to hear them. GBViews at gbnews.uk or tweet me out at GBNews. It's coming up to 10 minutes to 4 o'clock today. On the 23rd of April, it is, of course, St George's Day. Yes, St George is England's patron saint and the namesake for England's flag, the St George's Cross. While Ireland celebrates St Patrick's Day and Scotland St Andrew's Day, both of which are bank holidays, in England, nationalism isn't really celebrated. So should we be proud of being English? Right, so, Peter, you English?
I'm English, yeah, I have some Scottish roots. I'm English. I'd also call myself British, and I'm proud to be both.
Yep. Molson?
Yeah, I'm very proud to be English, but, you know, it's unique, perhaps in the world, that the English are made to feel ashamed of their race by other Englanders, specifically by enlightened, educated, liberal commentators who only see England through the prism of the bad things historically. For example, Scottish nationalism is celebrated as brave and something which should be supported. Everyone's Irish on St Patrick's Day. You know, the same with Welsh nationalism, but uniquely English nationalism is portrayed as the kind of English Defence League, the sort of dirty, racist nationalism. And we see this from people like Emily Thornberry tweeting those pictures of white van men with the flags outside the door, with a sneering contempt for what it means to be English. And I think we need to sort of kick back against that and reclaim St George's Day. Everyone says on St George's Day, oh, you know, he was Turkish. And put fish and chips are Portuguese. And by the way, dragons don't exist. Spoiler. But the whole point is that we are made to feel ashamed for being English. And I think it's a terrible dereliction of our national fabric.
I think a common theme in Martin's answers is he's kind of railing against an unseen enemy.
It's not an unseen enemy.
Throughout the afternoon. And to go to particularly a point about Scotland, I've lived in Scotland and I enjoyed it greatly and have some Scottish roots going back a long way. But there's an equally live debate about proud Scottish nationalism, but also Scotland's role in the British Empire over 200 or 300 years, which at times was deeply violent, unpleasant and financially acquisitive. But there's a reasoned debate about it, just like there's a reasoned debate in England.
Yeah.
And no one's making me feel ashamed about being English.
No, good. And I think there is some merit, though, to be said, and you must agree, that the bad things which the Empire did, Britain did, which is ostensibly an English issue, slavery, for example, colonialism, is seen as the bad thing. Never mind the fact that the Royal Navy helped to eradicate slavery globally, and never mind the fact that the English, the British, instilled democracy, rule of law, the English language, lots of great things too. But that's kind of been lost in the midst of time, because it is England equals bad. And it's seen, I think...
Who says that, by the way?
You get it all over the social media. You get it over...
But who in particular?
OK, so you get it in The Guardian. The Guardian commentators, they want to get rid of Nelson. They don't like the flag. Emily Thornberry, what about that? Now, Emily Thornberry tweeted that picture. What was that meant to be, other than a sneering contempt for the English working classes?
I think that was 11 or 12 years ago. She was sacked and apologised. Do you have any more recent examples?
So she didn't mean it?
Well, you have to ask her.
A bit like the anti-Semitism. Didn't really mean it because they apologised.
Hold on, please don't imply for a moment
what I'm
that I have
saying
sympathy with anti-Semitism.
A quick apology.
Please don't imply that I have sympathy with anti-Semitism.
No, I'm not saying that. What I'm saying is it seems to me that if you're a Labour MP and you say something racist, you can just apologise and it goes away. And if you put a picture of English people on council estates with flags there, which is obviously, a sneering contempt. Oh, I apologise, I didn't really mean it. Trouble is, people don't forget, and nor should they. And I think it's at times like this when the true colours are shown. I do. And English people are ridiculed and mocked and made to feel ashamed all the time by the liberal media. You don't see that, do you?
What's your point? I mean, that's a stream of consciousness monologue.
No, because there is a point to this, actually, that there does feel as though a sense of being English is not one to be proud of. If you look at all the other days, they have holidays, they have lots of things going on. But in England, very little is done about it. It's almost as though you want to brush under the carpet. And there is a lot of this reparations and how bad the English were. And it does seem to be, to even, me looking at it, I do feel that myself.
I think it's completely right that we have a balanced debate about what England and Britain got wrong as well as got right historically. But there's also an awful lot to be proud of in our history, whether it was the sacrifices of war or penicillin or reforms in education and so on and so on.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. But unfortunately, those sort of things, undeservedly, don't tend to get the bandwidth. It's a day that's basically mocked and ridiculed. You go on Twitter today, St George's Day, it's just something that's basically slagged off by radio broadcasters, TV presenters, Guardian columnists. They do, because they hate England.
Well, let's have a look. Let's see what people are saying. Luke says, Nana, love to watch you, but the types that you have on are scruffy. You're not talking about my hair then, Luke? I know it's an old wig, I need a new one. They said the mealy-mouthed lefty, that must be it's a turn-off. Sorry, I'm switching off. Don't switch off. We want balanced debate, and don't be so insulting anyway. But I thought there's some compliments as well.
I've been called worse.
I've been called a lot worse as well. Let's see. Carl Evans, Carl says, I am 100% proud of being English. We're continually criticised by snowflakes and do-gooders. I love being English and wouldn't want to be anything else. Thank you, Carl. Let's see, Scarlett. She's calling herself Scarlett Pimpernel. I don't think that's your real name. So I think I can say that out loud. Oh, no, I'm not going to read that, actually. Sharon says, English and proud to be so. Billy says, I am a proud Englishman and I do think we are demonised for flying the flag. On stopping the boats, Marion says, I honestly believe that the majority of the UK want action now, like me, because we are paying for illegals through our taxes. There's nothing wrong with stopping individuals from using our money via legal aid to facilitate their cases if our working citizens are using the system to dodge paying bills and use the government action. Marion, I'll try to read the rest of that, but I couldn't quite get there in time. Well, it's not going to say a huge thank you to you. I've thoroughly enjoyed talking to you today. Thank you to Peter Edwards, former editor of The Label. It's good to talk to you. Thank you very much for joining me. Mealy-mouthed lefty. And also, thank you so much.
Nana, you're always friendly to me.
And Martin Dorfley, former Brexit Party MEP and also GB News presenter here. Well, listen, stay tuned, because on the way I've got my monologue. Do not go anywhere. We've got Christine Hamilton and also Danny Kelly joining me. I'll see you in a moment.
Monday to Thursday nights on GB News. At 6, it's Dubes & Co. 7 o'clock, Farage. At 8, join Jacob Rees-Mogg. And at 9, Dan Wootton Tonight, followed by Headliners. On TV, radio and online. This is GB News.
First and foremost, I'm a GB News fan, and I was before I was working here. Just love the fact that we're asking the questions that a lot of establishment media won't ask.
With a bit of a twist, we not only want to inform you, but we want to keep you entertained.
It's worth the drive because you get in and the team's all ready and waiting, they're itching to go, and it's a proper little family.
GB News is the people's channel.
It's the audience that makes the programme sing.
We're giving our viewers and our listeners a voice. I see the thousands of your letters, tweets, emails, you name it, coming in.
Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it?
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent you.
It's time for something different. It's time for GB News. I'm very patriotic. I believe in Britain. Our best days lie ahead.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Join us here on GB News.
The people's channel.
Britain's news channel.
Join me, Patrick Christie's, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6. We tackle the day's news agenda like you've never seen before. It's high tempo, high octane, the most controversial topics and the best guests. You will not be able to take your eyes and ears off it. I'm not afraid to ask the questions that you really want answered. 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
GB News has its own late-night paper preview show, Headliners, where comedians take you through the next day's top news stories. You don't have to bother reading the newspaper, we've got it covered for you. Headliners, every night at 11 p.m. and repeated every morning at 5 a.m. We won't send you to sleep like some of the other paper review shows out there. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, on Sunday mornings from 9:30, taking the politicians to task and breaking out of SW1 to see how their decisions are affecting you across the UK. Bursting the Westminster bubble every Sunday morning, only on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain's watching.
Hello, I'm Calvin Robinson. Do not miss my Common Sense Crusade Saturdays at 7 p.m. Join me for some in-depth discussions on faith. Is that not the start of the slippery slope?
It's very much so.
And the big moral questions of the day.
I'm baffled.
You've got some nerve.
Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my 2 comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello, good afternoon and welcome. This is GB News on TV, online and on digital radio. I'm Nana Akua, and for the next 2 hours, me and my panel will be taking on some of the big topics hitting the headlines right now. This show is all about opinion. It's mine, it's theirs, and of course it's yours. We'll be debating, discussing, and at times we will disagree, but no one will be cancelled. Joining me today, it's author and broadcaster Christine Hamilton, and also journalist and broadcaster Danny Kelly. Before we get started, let's get your latest news headlines.
Good afternoon. Rapidly approaching 1 minute past 4, I'm Ray Addison in the GB newsroom. An alert has been heard on most smartphones across the UK as part of a government trial. At 3 p.m, people received a message on their home screen along with a sound and vibration for up to 10 seconds. However, not everyone received the alert as planned and some received it early. The system is intended to warn people about life-threatening situations such as fires, flooding and terror attacks.
Deputy Prime Minister Oliver Dowden says the sound could save people's lives in the future.
It's the case that this has been developed with the National Cyber Security Centre, which forms part of GCHQ. There will be very strict procedures in place for its authorisation, and it will only be used in a situation where your viewers' lives are in danger. I'm determined that there is a very high bar for the usage of this.
The Prime Minister has confirmed that British diplomats and their families have been evacuated from Sudan amid escalating violence in the country. Rishi Sunak says UK armed forces completed a complex mission in the capital Khartoum alongside other allies. Hundreds of civilians have died in the violent conflict between the Sudanese army and a rival paramilitary group. Foreign Secretary James Cleverly says the government is continuing to ensure the safety of British nationals who remain in the country.
We have taken the decision to temporarily close the embassy and to relocate our embassy staff. That gives us the best opportunity to project our diplomatic support back into Sudan, but we remain absolutely committed to support British nationals in Sudan. We will do so in close coordination with our international partners. But the best thing that we can do to support British nationals, and indeed everyone in Sudan, is push the generals involved in this conflict to bring it to an end, and that will remain the priority of our diplomatic focus in the region.
Diane Abbott has been suspended as a Labour MP pending an investigation after she claimed that Jewish people are not subject to racism. In an article for the Observer newspaper, the former Shadow Health Secretary said Jewish people were subjected to prejudice like Irish or red-headed people, but they did not experience racism. She's since withdrawn the remarks and apologised for any offence caused. However, the Labour Party has condemned the comments as deeply offensive and wrong. Meanwhile, London Mayor Sadiq Khan described it as unacceptable.
I don't understand how anybody can think that, how anybody could say that, but even worse, write a letter to the Observer to publish that it's right she's apologised. The Labour Party's done the right thing to suspend her at beggar's belief.
The Home Secretary says it's crucial that the government has the power to deport migrants without being blocked by the European Court of Human Rights. In the Sunday Telegraph, Suella Braverman said, for Britain to be truly sovereign, it needs to be able to decide who enters our territory. This comes after 11 small boats carrying nearly 500 people crossed the English Channel yesterday. Leader of the Liberal Democrats, Sir Ed Davey, says the government isn't doing enough to tackle the issue.
The backlog of asylum applications that have not been processed is 160,000. That's the problem, and this does nothing to solve that. Liberal Democrats want this problem solved, but the government is just being in chaos and can't even do the basics right.
Sir Mo Farah has finished 9th in his final London Marathon with a time of 2 hours and 10 minutes. Kenya's Kelvin Kiptum smashed the course record to win the men's race in the second fastest time ever. Dutch athlete Sifan Hassan won the women's race. Today's London Marathon is set to be the largest ever, with at least 45,000 people taking part. Around £60 million is expected to be raised for charity. And 2 new pictures of Prince Louis have been published as he celebrates his 5th birthday today. He's been photographed being pushed in a wheelbarrow by his mother. Louis is expected to accompany his siblings in the procession from Westminster Abbey during the King's coronation next month. This is GB News. We'll bring you more as it happens. Now let's get straight back to Nana.
Good afternoon. It's fast approaching 6 minutes after 4 o'clock. This is GB News on TV, online and on digital radio. I'm Nana Akua. Oh, God, where do we start? From the woman who gave us these toe-curling gaffes.
How much would 10,000 police officers cost?
Well, if we recruit the 10,000 police men and women over a 4-year period, we believe it'll be about £300,000.
£300,000 for 10,000 police officers? What are you paying them?
Response times to 999 calls are increasing. And that would give us, I think, 170... How? Sorry.
Diane Abbott. Diane has sunk to the lowest of all lows. In a letter for The Observer, Diana suggested that Jewish people do not face racism, but instead face prejudice similar to redheads. She was apparently responding to writer Tomiwa Owalande's claims that Irish, Jewish and traveller people all suffer from racism. Diane said that racism in Britain is not a black and white issue. It's far more complicated. She went on to write, they undoubtedly experience prejudice. This is similar to racism, and the two words are often used as if they are interchangeable. It is true that many types of white people with points of difference, such as redheads, can experience this prejudice, but they are not all their lives subject to racism. She added, in pre-civil rights America, Irish people, Jewish people and travellers were not required to sit at the back of the bus. In apartheid South Africa, these groups were allowed to vote. And at the height of slavery, there were no white-seeming people mandated on slave ships. I have one word for you, Diane. Auschwitz. I've been there. And there weren't any redheads. They weren't after redheads. They were after mainly Jewish people. This is the woman who was Jeremy Corbyn's right hand. You may recall that he was accused of anti-Semitism, and for a long while, Jewish people refused to vote for the Labour Party. Remember Black Lives Matter? Diane Abbott was all over that like a rash. Turns out they weren't all that they were cracked up to be. I knew that, most sensible people knew that. It was in the title, excluding all other races, as though racism towards black people is the worst kind, a sort of my suffering of racism is worse than yours because I'm black, as though there are grades of it, which is nonsense. Racism is racism, and there is not one better or lesser kind. How stupid and ill-judged of her to come out with this guff. Diane has since issued an apology saying that she wholly and unreservedly withdraws the comments. The Labour Party have suspended the whip from her, and their spokesperson said this. The Labour Party completely condemns these comments, which are deeply offensive and wrong. The Chief Whip has suspended the Labour whip from Diane Abbott pending an investigation. But the worst thing about her comments is that they were considered and that she actually wrote them down. She felt it was OK to say those things. A bit like when Labour's Rupert Huck, who thought it was OK to call Kwasi Kwarteng superficially black. We can't have idiotic people like this holding positions of power. No apology is good enough. She may have said sorry, but that's what she really thinks. She wouldn't be apologising if no one had said anything. Diane Abbott is a complete embarrassment. Well, before we get stuck into the debate, here's what else is coming up today. For the Great British Debate this hour, I'm asking, should ministers pick their own civil servants? The government's advisor on civil servants, Francis Maude, is reportedly drawing up plans to give ministers greater powers to appoint their own civil servants, even those with overt political beliefs, as the fallout from Dominic Raab's resignation continues. But is this the solution? Then at 4:50, it's World View. General Secretary Jens Stoltenberg has said all NATO allies have agreed that Ukraine will eventually become a member. Political commentator and Russia expert Danny Armstrong will be in the studio to discuss that and more. Then at 5, it's Outside. And today I'm joined by a very special guest. He is best known for appearing on one of the most popular reality TV series of all time. He has recently shed over 15 stone. There's a clue there. Stay tuned to find out who he is. That's coming up in the next hour. As ever, tell me what you think on everything we're discussing. Email gbviews@gbnews.uk or tweet me at gbnews. Right, let's get started. Let's welcome again to my panel. It's author and broadcaster Christine Hamilton and also journalist and broadcaster Danny Kelly. Right, well, welcome both. Nice to see you. Nice and cheery.
Thank you.
Christine, I love the pink, by the way.
Thank you, thank you, thank you.
And Danny...
Yeah, I'm here too.
Same as ever. Same as ever.
We'll get Danny in a bright pink shirt one day.
Oh, that'd be great, wouldn't it? That'd be fabulous. Yeah, do you wear colours?
Yes, I do.
Do you?
Yeah. As in colour, like blue?
Like bright colours?
No, big colour, big colour.
No,
Statement colour.
When you are 6'4" and 21 stone,
Could you imagine yellow?
You want
a Felicia Beacon.
You want to wear something that makes you not stand out even further. I like pink. Pink's as red as I'll go. And also, I'm an Everton fan. I hate the colour red because of Liverpool and Man United.
Fair enough. So, Danny, I'm going to start with you then. What do you think? These comments, I mean, I just want to put my hands over my eyes every time I see Diana, because I think that something bad's going to happen. She's going to say something that will just embarrass me, in particular as a black woman, when I see that. And it's not that but I want to see somebody who looks maybe similar to me, sounding good and looking good as well, because it makes me feel better. But
I'm married to a Jew. My in-laws are Jews. So I, if you like, have a personal investment in this story. And I was trying to look at this as objectively as possible rather than subjectively, because subjectively I think she's as thick as mince. But if you look at it objectively, now, Keir Starmer has done his best to eradicate this nonsense, this perceived anti-Semitic nonsense. So he got rid of Corbyn.
Eventually. It took him long enough.
Of course. Now Abbott is an acolyte of Corbyn's. And once again, it's
She was a former lover of Corbyn.
No, we don't have any proof of that, Christine.
Yes. Really? Oh, no, it's admitted.
Has it been admitted?
Yes.
Well, I haven't seen it
they were going out with each other.
They had a little ding dong.
Well, I'll just check with that. And
All right,
no, I've heard that. So she's an acolyte of Corbyn, and it still shows you that that mob are incorrigible. You can't change their view. You would have thought that once bitten, twice shy, or maybe twice bitten, thrice shy. But no, she doubles down and continues to, in my view, trivialise the Holocaust, which you highlighted in your monologue.
Well, she has apologised, to her credit, but it's, I'm sick and tired of people comparing apples and pears. A Holocaust is nothing. It's not like anything. A Holocaust is a Holocaust. There's nothing.
But to conflate it with someone with red hair,
it's mind-blowing.
That just is mind-blowingly.
She was conflating the level of prejudice, the type of prejudice that people.
Because we can have an argument, and the argument is as old as Abraham, going back to the Old Testament, about whether the Jewish people are indeed a race. See, I can convert to Judaism, but that doesn't mean that I am all of a sudden part of that race. And this polarises Jews as well. So there's plenty of debates for thousands of years, centuries, about whether you can actually identify Jews as a race. So you get black Jews, you get white Jews, you get brown Jews.
Well, I mean, if you're going to go that way, we are human race, we're one race, so there isn't really any...
So I was trying to look at it...
But to be honest with you, racism is a man-made construct, so if we're going to go that far, then actually we are all one race. But if we're going to divide ourselves in the way that we have, and we've accepted that Jewish people or Jews are one race, and black people are one race, and white people, and we've done that to ourselves, then in the context of that,
it's not a visual difference, though. That was what she was going on about. It's not a visual difference. She wouldn't know my wife was a Jew, and that's her point.
I don't think it's a good enough point, though. What do you think?
Nor do I. I mean, and you hit the nail on the head when you said this isn't just something she said randomly in a live interview. She wrote it down.
Considered.
It was considered, and her explanation is, and her excuse is, that the wrong draft was sent. Well, OK, that means that the first draft, that is what she thought. So, I mean, it's a ridiculous excuse. And, I mean, she is a racist herself, Diana. She's a black racist. She has been for... I've seen it. She is thick as mince as well, you're absolutely right. And she also said, that no, white-seeming people, I mean, what is a white-seeming person, was ever enslaved. She's completely wrong about that. She's so bad on her history as well as her maths, as you showed by that ridiculous clip about her and the policeman. What about the Barbary slave trade, where white Britons, people on the south coast of Britain in the 17th century, were terrified of being taken as slaves?
She's not here to defend herself, but she has apologised for it, so she knows that what she said was wrong. But
it's what she thinks deep down, because it's no good just saying it was an early draft. Anyone who even lets that get onto a piece of paper as a draft, it's in there, isn't it?
Well, to me, it's actually indefensible, but obviously she's not here. She has apologised, she's accepted that she was wrong. But I mean, look, she apologised and pretty sharpish, but my worry was that had nobody pointed that out to her, she wouldn't be apologising because she wrote it down. She wrote it down and then sent it out, allowed somebody to read that and felt that that was appropriate. And what worries me is you have people like this in positions of power making judgments like that. And you've got to ask yourself, where is their common sense? Why should she should be nowhere near any power or any decisions? And that worries me about the Labour Party, because there seems to be a lot of it hanging about.
But also, she should be nowhere near that subject. She knows how toxic that subject has been for that side of the hard left Labour Party. Why is she revisiting? Why is she revisiting it?
She's playing into Starmer's hands. I mean, I know he has trouble with his left wing, and he's got rid of Corbyn, and he's now going to have to get rid of her. But in a way, she's playing into his hands because she's allowing him to do it. But she She is the absolute opposite of you, because you are a proud black woman.
Thank God.
Well, thank God. Let me finish. I mean, I know that's stating the bleeding
Here comes the insult.
No. Because, but what Diane Abbott nurtures is exactly the same as what Meghan Markle nurtures.
You
is
think?
that every anti-thing against her is
Victimhood.
because she's black. It's because she's black.
I just
Which
don't
it's
like
not.
this
She
narrative.
is very, very stupid.
Well, she's also very, very privileged. I mean, it's not as though
children to
her
private
colour
school.
not as though her colour, by looking at it, has appeared to hinder her progress. She's done incredibly well, a lot better than a lot of white people. But what I don't like is this almost grading of racism, where because you're black, your racism is worse, so you're at the top of the worst to get the racism. Then it's the people who are slightly light. Then it's the people, and then these people you can't really see their racism. So it's like a hidden disability. It could be equally as damaging to you mentally and psychologically in every way, but no one can see that from the outset. And I don't think it's acceptable. Racism is racism, and it's unacceptable, and it's a mindset. So it doesn't matter whether you're somebody who's white and racist or black racist, or racism is racism.
Apparently, 1 in 5 Jews in this country have experienced a racist attack. Now, you may she may say that 100% of black people have experienced racism, but that's not the point.
But Nana, you just touched on something about who can be a target.
The hierarchy.
So the hierarchical structure of racism.
Where do bald people?
Well, she's
normally it's Nana who takes the mickey out of me.
You told me off, and now listen to you.
So the hierarchical structure of, if you like, racism and victimhood, at the moment, black people are at the top. And I believe it's become more pronounced since the murder, that terrible murder of George Floyd. The whole landscape has changed in the last 2 or 3 years about black lives and Black Lives Matter. And I think a lot of people are playing to that.
But arguably, you could say that if that is the structure, then they're the ones that are getting the most help out of it, if you see what I mean. So, like, you go to a job and they're looking for somebody who's black or from Africa or something like that. So I don't really subscribe to that. For me, it's a mindset, and if you allow that mindset, that you're at the top of the pecking order for racism, and you're there, you're actually perpetuating it. And she needs to stop that. So she's perpetuating a narrative and a mindset that says that black people are more victimised than any other type of race, and that needs to stop. I don't want to hear that. I don't want to hear that.
By saying Jews don't get persecuted.
Yes, so she's saying it's worse for black people.
No, to equate,
she needs to stop.
To equate the persecution that Jews have had historically and still get today with people who have ginger hair. I know people who have ginger hair get teased, etc. But to equate the two is mind-boggling.
Well, she obviously needs to go to Auschwitz. She needs to take a visit to the death camps. I've been there. And she needs to understand that that is not about having ginger hair, and there is no similarity to that at all. And I think she's a disgrace.
Really
she's a disgrace. She's an absolute disgrace.
She is a disgrace, you're right.
Absolute disgrace. Well, let me know what your thoughts are as well. Remember to send me your thoughts. gbviews@gbnews.uk. You're with me. I'm Nana Akua. This is GB News. We're live on TV, online, and digital radio. On the way at 5, it's my outside. Now, my celebrity guest used to date fellow reality TV star Lydia Bright, with their tempestuous relationship gripping viewers for over 5 seasons. Who do you think it might be? Then, after the break, it's time for the Great British Debate this hour. I'm asking, should ministers pick their own civil servants? According to the reports, the government's advisor on civil servants, Francis Maud, is drawing up plans to give ministers greater power to appoint their own civil servants after the fallout from Dominic Raab's resignation. But is this the solution? Send me your thoughts as ever. gbviews@gbnews.uk, or tweet me at GBNews. You can also get involved in the poll, which is up right now, asking that very question. Should ministers pick their own civil servants? Cast your vote now. Back in a moment.
It's all about family, being in people's living rooms, all the interaction and getting to know who our viewers and listeners are.
When I was young, my dad used to say, Nana, stop arguing. I wanted an outlet that would enable me to give my opinion.
People are going through a really hard time right now, and I know that you don't feel like you're being listened to by the establishment. I came to GB News because it's the People's Channel, and I want the audience to have their say on the events of the day.
We're dynamic. We do something different.
Democracy shows that the wisdom of the nation is in its people.
I get to travel to find out what the story is from a personal perspective.
The British people aren't fools. We know when we're not being told the full story.
We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this.
It's the best country in the world.
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent your views.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
The Jubes and Co, we tackle the issues of the day with real, robust debate. Both sides of the fence, battling it out with me in the middle with my forthright opinions and views. And often really interesting things happen because you start with a position and then by the end of the debate you find actually, well, I might not have thought about that one.
What we need in this country is 2 new political parties.
You should maybe think about doing a 2024 calendar. I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm keeping you company right through until 7 o'clock this evening.
GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's watching.
Start the day with GB News.
We catch up on all the big stories you didn't hear the night before.
And take a look at what the world's talking about this morning. That's right, Monday to Thursdays from 6 o'clock. It's Breakfast with Eamon and Isabel.
Straight after breakfast, join us, Bev Turner and Andrew Pearce. We're going to take you through till noon.
We'll be tackling the big topics of the day, including the things that the other channels just won't talk about. If it's happening here. Wake up to mornings on GB News, the People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
I'm Simon Evans. Join me on GB News for Headliners at 11 p.m.
What's the scoop?
I'll be joined by 2 of the country's top comedians.
That's right.
As we take a look at tomorrow's newspapers tonight.
We're going to get into trouble.
If it's a big story, we'll be covering it.
Spill some tea on him.
There we go.
But we'll also have some fun.
I wouldn't stick up a bank.
My father didn't love me.
So anyway.
Headliners every night from 11 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel. Saturday nights on GB News.
From 6 p.m, I'll give you my unique take on the world today.
Then at 7, it's me, Calvin Robinson, with my Common Sense Crusade.
New to GB News is the Saturday 5.
5 times the opinion. Join us every Saturday from 8 p.m. as we debate the week's stories.
With us 4, plus a special guest.
And at 9, of course, it's Mark Dolan Tonight.
Saturday nights on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon. It's just gone 23 minutes after 4 o'clock. If you just joined me, where have you been? Stop turning over the papers. It's noisy.
Sorry, man.
Before we get stuck into the debate, we're discussing Diane Abbott and her comments. Let's have a quick look at what you've been saying. Alan says she thinks that Jewish people cannot be or haven't been racially under attack. As a Jewish person, that has been discriminated against. I find that offensive. I find it offensive listening to her as well. Michael says Starmer will be dying to kick her out with Corbyn as he tries to rebrand Labour. Yeah, she has given him the exact perfect opportunity. Barbara says Diane Abbott should be kicked out of the Labour Party. And not a moment too soon, I've added that in. Marion says an apology does not unsay Diane's offensive and ill-informed comments. Do you know what the worst thing is? They weren't just comments, she wrote them down. She has offended a lot of people and brought her intelligence into question time and time and again. I added that in as well. Time for her to go. Honestly, I actually feel a little bit of sympathy for her, for her behaviour. I don't know whether there's something that is wrong with her or whether something's going on with her, so we'll just put that there just in case. But it is time for the Great British Debate this hour, and I'm asking, should ministers pick their own civil servants? Now, there's, of course, been a fallout from Dominic Raab's resignation as the Deputy Prime Minister, and it's continuing because he supposedly bullied his staff. The government's advisor on civil servants, Francis Maude, is reportedly drawing up plans to give ministers greater powers. Now, this would mean that they could potentially appoint their own civil servants, even those with overt political beliefs. And according to Maude, the UK needs to be less mealy-mouthed about the word politicisation. We've used that once already today on Peter Edwards. Somebody wrote in and called him mealy-mouthed. You'll be pleased to say he's actually joining us in a moment. When discussing the civil servants, he said that the government need to learn from countries such as Australia, New Zealand, where civil servants are not subject to the same political impartiality rules. He claims that this leads to less group thinking, more open debate and less tension between ministers and their staff. And it's hoped that such changes in the rules would help to avoid what has happened to Dominic Raab, where a Deputy Prime Minister claimed activist civil servants who opposed the government's agenda were acting against him. But is that the solution? That is the question. There's a lot there. For the Great British Debate this hour, I'm asking, should ministers pick out their own civil servants? To debate this, I'm joined by Stephen Pound, former Labour MP, Martin Daubeny, GB News contributor, Peter Edwards, former editor of the Labour List, and also Suzanne Evans. Right, well, I'm going to start with my newbie, Peter Edwards. Not you, actually, not Peter Edwards. I'm sorry, I couldn't work out what your name is again. Who are you?
Stephen Pound.
Stephen Pound.
I used to be.
Yeah, I'm joking. Stephen, what do you think? Should they be allowed to pick their own civil servants?
Absolutely not. It's bonkers. One of the few things we can actually be proud of in what Peter Hennessy talks about, the marriage of government, is to actually have an impartial, expert civil service. Look, ministers do choose their own special advisors at the present time. There are people who are both civil servants and political appointees, SPAD, special advisors. So that you've got them already. Now, imagine if we had a politically appointed civil service. Do you know there are 500,000 civil servants in this country at the present time? So at what level do you start? What level do you stop? And what happens when the government changes? Do they all get the sack? What sort of a person would take a job in the heart of government knowing that it's only a temporary job? No, I'm sorry, to say that New Zealand and Australia are the exemplars of here, when you just actually look at France, where they have the cabinet system, look at America, where all the senior members are appointed on political grounds. Neither of them, I would suggest, is an excellent example for us in this country.
Well, let's go to Susan Evans, political commentator. Susan.
So I think what Stephen is saying would be absolutely fine were it the case that the civil service was the civil service of old, where they were genuinely impartial. But I think what we've seen, particularly with the Dominic Raab incident now, but before that also with Priti Patel, who you remember was also the subject of bullying allegations by civil servants who apparently seem to be very pro the European Union and very anti her views on immigration. So again, I think we've got a very different situation now. In an ideal world, yes, the civil service would be impartial, but I'm afraid I've met civil servants, I'm sure Stephen has as well, let's be honest, you must have done, Stephen, who are not impartial. They clearly aren't. And this is a problem that seems to be getting worse and worse. People I speak to in the civil service who are not part of the normal left-wing groupthink are finding it increasingly difficult to do their job. And they're seeing how the civil service is using their power to undermine and subordinate members of parliament and indeed government ministers. And I think if we've got a situation where civil servants are very important people in government. Remember, there are something like 3,500 laws that have passed under the radar without any kind of scrutiny from either the houses of houses of Parliament, statutory instruments, and civil servants just pushing these through. And we're losing a heck of a lot of scrutiny.
Well, let me get Peter Edwards on that one. What do you think, Peter?
There's no case for having political appointees of this nature. Steve Pound put it brilliantly, and one of the examples he quoted was America, where there's more and more gridlock in the legislatures. There's no case for it at all. And as Steve alluded to, there's already special advisors known as SPADs. So in the last 30 years, from Blair to Cameron to now, the number of those has increased, the salaries have increased. Some SPADs who work directly for the Secretary of State are paid more than 100 grand in some cases. So there's already a politicised class of official who have loyalty to their boss, and in 99% of cases to the party as well. There's just no case for this. And the virtue of the British Constitution, and Steve prayed in aid Lord Hennessy of Nymphsfield, is independence, is expertise. And of course, it gets it wrong some of the time, just like we do in all professions.
Well, let's get Martin on. Martin.
Well, I think we don't want to go from a situation of yes minister to yes men or yes women. So surround yourselves by people who fawn to you and agree with all you say and tug their forelocks. That's also bad. Why not go for a sort of jury-type system? If we can appoint a balanced jury to decide on individual cases, why not appoint a balanced civil service in the high offices of the land? You only have to look at the kind of list of scalps that have been claimed by the blob. Priti Patel, Dominic Raab, Boris Johnson, Partygate, and front page of the Express today. Look, they're going for Suella Braverman next. They're fearing that they are politically motivated in their attacks and their targets, specifically along lines of policies that they don't agree with: Brexit, immigration, deportation. With that in mind, why not have a kind of vetting process as you would in any ordinary business? So you have due impartiality. We clearly do not at the moment. And Dominic Raab took a swipe at the senior civil servants, not the juniors, the seniors who've been around since the days of Blair. Are they doing Blair's dirty work for the Labour Party still to this day? As long as that whiff of suspicion is around, I think the public have a right to ask and demand for some political impartiality.
Well, what about though? Because of so what about Mark Sawatzka? Now he's the head of the PCS union. He specifically said, which is a civil servants union, he specifically said that he wanted to bring the government down. The problem with not having civil servants who are kind of on your side is that if they decide to try and bring you down because they are mostly from the opposing party, then we have a problem, Stephen. I mean,
you can't judge the whole of the civil service by Mark Sorotka, but look,
but he's the head of the union of them. I mean, that's a big.
I know, but
big job.
He doesn't have a switch on people's brains to say that they should actually fall in line with him. I mean, Mark Sorotka is appointed by a very, very small percentage of people. But look, when I was an MP, I had a staff of about 3 or 4 people, and obviously I'd prefer them to be sympathetic to my political party, my views, but I didn't actually appoint them on that basis. And I think a lot of we got here is just bad management. I had people in my office who were not Labour supporters, but they were damn good at their job. And I think if you manage those staff properly, then you're doing the job properly. But as for politicisation, it is not politicising to actually call out incompetence. And where you see incompetence in the civil service, the Rwanda plan, a lot of the nonsense that's going on at the moment, that is not incompetence. That is doing your job properly. As far as I'm concerned, Dominic Raab was a bad manager.
Yes, but Stephen, when Dominic Raab called out incompetence in the civil service over deploying Spanish troops on the Gibraltar mainland, he was called a bully and removed from his post. So
how did he do it? That's the point.
Well, he was abrasive.
Suzanne.
Yeah, I mean, I was hearing a story just a couple of weeks ago from someone who works in the civil service. They had someone in their office who wasn't performing. Well, they weren't doing their job. She made a complaint. HR got involved. Everybody agreed with her. But this person was just shoved on sideways. It is actually very difficult with current employment legislation to get rid of people who are not good and not performing. And the civil service is no different. And I think what Martin said is brilliant. We've got to have some kind of selection procedure for civil servants. They need to be tested. At the moment, if they overstep the mark, I mean, I think of someone like the former head of the civil service, Gus O'Donnell, who after the Brexit vote said, it doesn't matter, leaving the EU's not inevitable. Well, sorry, Gus, it isn't, it wasn't, it should have been. Just being called before a select committee and basically being able to turn your nose up to it is not good enough scrutiny, is not good enough accountability. The civil servants, at the very least, needs.
Oh, she's gone. Peter.
Well, that's one way of closing down the debate.
What did you say?
No, I thought Martin. I'm about to fall off my chair. I thought Martin was living in a parallel reality. Yeah. In any other walk of life, you don't ask people their political views when they've applied for a job.
It's illegal,
and you're not allowed to.
This is politics.
And the idea that you have pre-appointment hearings like in the US. Well, if we already complain about the civil service being too slow at times, like in COVID, that will slow things down even more. Finally, there is no evidence at all that the complainants in the Raab case had anything to do with an anti-Brexit conspiracy. Brexit has happened, a hard Brexit has happened. Dominic Raab broke the rules and he resigned before he was sacked.
All right, well, let's see. Let's see what your thoughts are then. I'm going to ask each of you, should the civil service be partial or impartial? Should it be impartial? Impartial. What do you think?
It should be impartial,
Martin.
and I think we need balance, and we should, as I said, have a selection process, not to weight it in one party's favour, but to ascertain balance. So therefore, decisions can be judged in balance and not in bias.
So should they be allowed to pick their own civil servants? Yes or no?
I think both major parties, should be involved in the selection process, and no, they shouldn't be allowed to choose their own people. But there should be a selection process to ensure neutrality.
That's a no. Should they be allowed to pick their own people? Yes or no?
Absolutely not.
No, and Peter.
Absolutely not, and I'm delighted that there's a right of redress for civil servants who've been wronged by their political masters.
We don't want political eunuchs in the civil service, as simple as that.
OK, well, I think we've got a load of them anyway. Stephen Pound, thank you very much. Stephen Pound.
In fact, there were a lot less trouble if they were.
Stephen Pound,
no, that's MPs, sorry.
Labour MP Stephen Pound, thank you so much. Martin Daubney, GBNews contributor, and Peter Edwards, thank you so much. And Susan Evans, even, who disappeared. Thank you very much.
Cheers, Suzanne.
Well, you're with me, I'm Nana Akua. This is GB News on TV, online and on digital radio. After the break, we'll continue with our great British debate this hour. And I'm asking, should ministers be able to pick their own civil servants? You'll hear the thoughts of my panel, author and broadcaster Christian Hamilton, and also journalist and broadcaster Danny Kelly. But first, let's get your latest news headlines.
(34 Here's the latest from the GB Newsroom. An alert has been heard on most smartphones across the UK as part of a government trial. At 3 p.m, people received a message on their home screen along with a sound and vibration for up to 10 seconds. However, the government has confirmed that not everyone received it as planned. The system is intended to warn people about life-threatening situations such as fires, flooding or terror attacks. Deputy Prime Minister Oliver Dowden says the sound could save people's lives in the future. Well, the Prime Minister has confirmed that British diplomats and their families have been evacuated from Sudan amid escalating violence in the country. Rishi Sunak says UK armed forces completed a complex mission in the capital, Khartoum, alongside other allies. Hundreds of civilians have died in the violent conflict between the Sudanese army and a rival paramilitary group. The Foreign Secretary says they're continuing to ensure the safety of British nationals who remain in the country. And Diane Abbott has been suspended as a Labour MP pending an investigation after she claimed that Jewish people are not subject to racism. In an article for the Observer newspaper, the former Shadow Health Secretary said Jewish people were subjected to prejudice like Irish or red-headed people, but they did not experience racism. She's since withdrawn the remarks and apologised for any offence caused. However, the Labour Party has called the comments deeply offensive and wrong. On TV, online, on DAB+ radio and on TuneIn too. This is GB News. Back now to Nana.
Thank you, Ray. Lots more still to come here on GB News, including our special mystery guest for Outside at 5. I'll give you some more clues. He's a reality TV star. He's been known for his screen antics with Mark Wright. Are you any closer to guessing who he is? He's going to be live in the studio. And then, for the Great British Debate this hour, I'm asking, should ministers pick their own civil servants? That's next. Don't go anywhere.
I joined GB News because I was sick and tired of not hearing my views being represented, not just mine, but so many people that I knew and spoke to.
I just couldn't get my voice out there. I couldn't say anything. I couldn't do anything. Whatever the narrative was, I kind of had to follow it.
GB News is there to provide a voice for those who have been ignored by the establishment media. We think different things, we've got a different style.
GB News is here to be optimistic and positive about the future.
It's real kind of dynamic and flowing, with the audience very much at the heart of it, like a big family.
Here at GB News, we talk about the things that matter to you.
Hearing the voices from right across our towns and cities, especially our towns.
All sides of the argument represented with a heavy dose of opinion.
We're on a mission here to make a difference.
And the GB News family really is here for you, and whatever time of day you can watch or listen.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Westminster is going around in ever-decreasing circles, followed by the media. Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it? Join me at 7 p.m, Mondays to Thursdays on Farage, here on GB News. We will have open, rational debate. We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this. Join us here on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain is watching.
You've probably seen politicians interviewed 1,000 times, but we do it differently. We find out who they really are, we don't shout, we chat, and hopefully we bring a bit of light, not just heat. Did you know Kate Moss?
Apparently.
Do you have a pair of jeans or a pair of jeans?
No, of course I don't. What would I do with them?
My friends are like, oh my God, what's she doing now?
Join me every Sunday at 6 for Gloria Meets, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Jacob Rees-Mogg, the Member of Parliament for North East Somerset and a former government minister. For years, I've walked the corridors of power in both Westminster and the City of London. We need to have the arguments, the discussions on how we make it better.
Crop failures, famine, war, suffering on a scale completely unimaginable.
We are putting the cart before the horse. As Charles I said at the scaffold, he was the true defender of liberty.
Yeah, I've completely derailed the conversation.
Join me Monday to Thursday at 8 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
New to GB News is the Saturday 5.
Join us every Saturday from 8 p.m. as we debate the week's stories. Right, folks, that was a spicy one, wasn't it?
With us 4, plus a special guest.
Sometimes she has to stick her foot in it. Sometimes she has to say things as they are.
Sometimes I think we should keep the refugees and send the pensioners to Rwanda. Then we'd be in a much better state.
Well, Benjamin, that is...
The Saturday 5. Saturday nights from 8. Only on GB News, the People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Hello, good afternoon. It's just coming up to 20 minutes to 5 o'clock. If you've just joined me, where have you been? This is GB News. We are the People's Channel. I'm Nana Akua. It's now time for our great British debate this hour, and I'm asking, should ministers pick their own civil servants now as the fallout from Dominic Raab's resignation as Deputy Prime Minister continues for supposedly bullying his staff? The government's advisor on civil servants, Francis Maud, is reportedly drawing up plans to give ministers greater powers. Now, this would mean that they could appoint their own civil servants, even those with overt political beliefs. Now, it's hoped that such changes in the rules would help to avoid a repeat of the Raab case, where the now Deputy Prime Minister claimed activist civil servants were acting against him. But is this the solution when the civil service is meant to be impartial? So, for the great British debate this hour, I'm asking, should ministers pick their own civil servants? Well, let's see what my panel make of that. I'm joined now by broadcaster and author Christine Hamilton, also journalist and broadcaster Danny Kelly. Christine, I'm going to come to you straight away because you've got a lot of experience in government. What do you have, Christine?
Absolutely none. As a civil servant, I couldn't. I've never understood how a civil servant could be so neutral and unpolitical, as I've been a political animal all my life. But anyway, put that to one side. Ministers, the civil service advise and the ministers decide, and the ministers take a hell of a responsibility, and they are basing the actions and the decisions that they take on the advice that they've been given.
Right.
And very often a new minister will arrive, and within 48 hours notice, sometimes less, he's on the floor of the House of Commons answering questions about something. So he relies on experienced people who, I mean, the British civil service used to be upheld as the best in the world and to be copied everywhere. It was at its best. There is none better. And ministers can counteract the impartiality by having, one of your panellists just now mentioned, by having special advisors. And, I mean, Margaret Thatcher, for example, this wasn't to counteract the civil service, this was to counteract Nigel Lawson, who she thought was secretly shadowing the Deutschmark, and she brought in Alan Walters as her special advisor to shoot him down. But they can bring in their own political people. I would not be happy about the civil service being politicised. We're only talking, let's be honest, about the senior echelons, because the vast majority of people who work in the civil service never come into contact with the minister. I mean, they might produce papers and things, but they all have to go through
in Dominic
senior
Raab's
people.
case, it was the more senior ones that he said,
Yes,
and he said
yes.
specifically they were the ones who
Yes.
actually were the kind of instigators of all of that. That was in his view.
Well,
That's what he said when he was interviewed by Olivia Utley, the exclusive interview that we had here on GB News.
The British ambassador to Spain.
So that's the thing. And it's not that if you picked your own civil servant that you'd pick one who absolutely agrees with you. You might be wise enough to pick people who could give you good advice. Danny, what do you think? Should they be able to pick?
Well, I think if Dominic Raab is a decent human being, and I've been across this story.
Possibly a touch arrogant, do you think?
Well, no, I think he's
Have you met him,
exhausted.
Christine?
Yes.
You met him? Oh, really?
You've met him?
Yes, but when I say arrogant, I mean that I don't know him well. It's just the way he comes over as a little bit arrogant.
Well,
I mean, I think all this bullying allegations is a nonsense. But
look,
I do think
I've heard that he works from 7 in the morning till 10:30 at night, 7 days a week. I think when Boris Johnson was near death's door, I think, you know, he showed his true colours. I thought he was a real ambassador for that position.
Although some people might remind him of Afghanistan.
When he was on holiday. Was he on holiday?
When Kabul fell.
OK, look, he's a human being, and he's a human being who goes away on holidays, and sometimes...
When there's a big...
But just going back to... If Dominic Raab... If Raab says that he was having to battle against civil servants, then I say, OK, I'm going to accept that version of events. And Mr Raab, if you are battling against your subordinates, mandarins at Westminster, then yes, you should be able to get rid of them. But then you have to look at it logistically. OK, so he's got a problem with civil servant A, not a problem with civil servant B, and he's starting to worry about civil servant C. How does he go about replacing them? Because he needs their advice every day of the week. So does he sack them and then interview, or then parachute somebody in? I think in theory it's a great idea. I just don't think it's possible.
So you think that they should be able to do their own civil service?
Yeah.
I kind of agree with you, Danny, on that respect. I think just because if I was going to pick my team, so like I pick you guys, I don't pick you guys because you agree with each other. I pick you because you've you've got different opinions. And I think that a minister should be wise enough to pick people who will give him some balanced views, but also who he gets on with. Otherwise, you're stuck with these people who literally are activists. I think he was probably telling the truth when he said
think he was telling the truth.
Oh, I completely support Dominic Raab. When I said I thought he was a touch arrogant, that is not... I do not think that he was wrong in all this. I'm on his side. But there's a great continuity aspect about the civil service. And ministers, they're like revolving doors, and some of them are there for only a few months. And if you don't have the continuity of your civil servants who have been in that department dealing with whatever particular, whether it's housing or health or education, and they will have been dealing with a minute part of any of those subjects. If you do away with all that, you can't start carting your people around all the time.
But you should be able to...
That's what the SPADs are there for.
But you should be able to sort of get rid of the ones that, you know, I think that it should be almost like a cyclical potential of a job where, like, when the new MP comes in, they can choose who they want within their civil service. So they will probably wisely keep some of the older ones there. But I think some of the ones who are definitely against you or not happy with your policies or who really
get rid of
are
them.
difficult,
absolutely,
you should be able to remove them. Otherwise, as was said, it's difficult to get people out of a job. So perhaps there should be the opportunity when a new minister comes in that they can do that.
Conversely, though, sometimes these civil servants are just parachuted into this position. They may know nothing about education. So they need old heads to actually guide them through the first couple of weeks at work. I mean, who's the new Deputy Prime Minister? Oliver Dowden? OK, so he's been parachuted into Dominic Raab's post, and he needs to hit the ground running, and he needs a good civil servant to do that.
Well, but if they don't like him, so, for example, in the case of Priti Patel, I'm pretty sure they just didn't like him, didn't like her, and there was a succession of look at the rotation of Home Secretaries that we've had who didn't like, they clearly didn't like they didn't like Priti Patel, they didn't like Amber Rudd, they didn't like, and it feels like they're just, you know, getting rid of people they don't like because they've been there for so long. But let's see what our viewers think, because this show is nothing without them. Let's welcome our great British voices, their opportunity to be on the show. Tell us what they think about the topics we're discussing. Let's head over to St Albans and speak to Jackie Sampson. Hello, Jackie. Welcome. Good to talk to you. So, Jackie,
I'm a bit torn about this, because when I was having a little read before, it seems to be the recruitment for civil service is about objectivity, being neutral. But I do see the need to have specialists and experience around you. And I think if ministers are too involved in selecting people, there's always that allegation of cronyism. The other thing I read is that the Prime Minister has the ultimate say-so in the appointment. But then again, we didn't vote for him. We voted for a party, but we didn't actually vote for the individual. So I'm thinking, the time and the place to have an input in the selection, but hopefully to surround yourself with specialists who are objective, impartial, and who you can trust. So that sounds like a bit of a utopia to me.
We seem to have a rotation, especially in the Home Office, of civil servants who seem to be so powerful that they get rid of people. That's what it looks like to me. But Jackie, thank you so much for your thoughts. It's interesting, and I'm wondering what other people are saying. That's Jackie Sampson. She was our great British voice in St Albans today. I've been asking, should ministers pick their own civil servants? Lots of you have been getting in touch. Tobias says, I worked in the military, and while some civil servants are good, the bulk are really inefficient. And as they sit outside our rank structure, they're virtually untouchable. Ian says, of course they should. When a new owner takes over a private company, he usually brings in his own team of trusted top managers in to make sure it's being properly run and to restructure it if it isn't. Mary says, absolutely, ministers should select their own civil servants and those left out should be sacked. Yes, I like that. You see, I'm kind of with you. I would be wise enough to choose people who don't have exactly the same opinion of me, but I'd make sure that I got on with them. And if I didn't, they're gone. Right. Let's have a look. There's a poll on Twitter throughout the day asking the question whether ministers should be able to pick their own civil servants. And currently, 71% of you say yes, 29% of you say no. Well, you're with me. I'm Nana Akua. This is GBNews on TV, online and on digital radio. After the break, it's Worldview. I'll be joined by political commentator Danny Armstrong and host of the Politics People podcast, Paul Dudridge, to discuss the top stories from around the globe. And on the menu, loads of different stories. But coming up at 5... my celebrity mystery guest will be in the studio. Let me give you another clue. In 2016, he was a contestant on Channel 4's The Jump and has recently lost a staggering 15 stone. Who is he? It's not Danny.
Monday to Thursday nights on GB News. At 6, it's Dubes & Co. 7 o'clock, Farage. At 8, join Jacob Rees-Mogg. And at 9, Dan Wootton Tonight, followed by Headliners. On TV, radio and online. This is GB News.
First and foremost, I am a GB News fan, and I was before I was working here. Just love the fact that we're asking the questions that a lot of establishment media won't ask.
With a bit of a twist, we not only want to inform you, but we want to keep you entertained.
It's worth the drive because you get in and the team's all ready and waiting, they're itching to go, and it's a proper little family.
GB News is the People's Channel.
It's the audience that makes the programme sing.
We're giving our viewers and our listeners a voice. I see the thousands of your letters, tweets, emails, you name it, coming in.
Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it?
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent you.
It's time for something different. It's time for GB News. I'm very patriotic. I believe in Britain. Our best days lie ahead.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Join us here on GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Join me, Patrick Christie's, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6. We tackle the day's news agenda like you've never seen before. It's high tempo, high octane, the most controversial topics, and the best guests. You will not be able to take your eyes and ears off it. I'm not afraid to ask the questions that you really want answered. 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
GB News has its own late-night paper preview show, Headliners, where comedians take you through the next day's top news stories. You don't have to bother reading the newspaper, we've got it covered for you. Headliners, every night at 11 p.m, and repeated every morning at 5 a.m. We won't send you to sleep like some of the other paper review shows out there. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, on Sunday mornings from 9:30, taking the politicians to task and breaking out of SW1 to see how their decisions are affecting you across the UK. Bursting the Westminster bubble every Sunday morning, only on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain's watching.
Hello, I'm Calvin Robinson. Do not miss my Common Sense Crusade Saturdays at 7 p.m. Join me for some in-depth discussions on faith. Is that not the start of the slippery slope?
It's very much so.
And the big moral questions of the day. I'm baffled.
You've got some nerve.
Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my 2 comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon. It's just coming up to 53 minutes after 4 o'clock. This is GB News. Don't forget you can watch the show live on YouTube, or why not down the free GB News app where you can have a look at everything that we have on the channel. I'm Nana Akua. Welcome on board. It's time now for World View. And according to NATO Secretary Jens Stoltenberg, all member countries of NATO have agreed that Ukraine will eventually join the organisation. Now, joining me to talk all about this is political commentator and Russia expert Danny Armstrong. Danny, this is NATO allies agreeing that Ukraine will become a member. Was that inevitable anyway? I mean, isn't it really that they'd like... And it's after the war, isn't it? So it's not during it.
Well, yeah, precisely. I mean, these are the words of Jens Stoltenberg, the NATO chief. He says that all allied members agree that Ukraine will become a member, but there's a catch, and there always is a catch with things like this, is if Ukraine win the war. Now, if we go back to September when Russia annexed the 4 regions in Ukraine, back then Ukraine asked for a rapid accession to NATO. NATO said it's not the right time. Jens Stoltenberg himself said that all allied member states must agree. Now, that first bit is done, but there is another obstacle in the way. And if I was Ukrainian, of course, Jens Stoltenberg, as I call him, Jens Saltenberg, as you have to take his words with a huge, huge pinch of salt, I wouldn't be reading too much into it. Some are seeing this as a carrot dangled in front of Ukraine, and also to justify the US, billions of dollars from the US being pumped into Ukraine with military aid also as a push to give Ukraine momentum in the war. Now, if we go back to 2008, NATO agreed in principle that Ukraine would become a member state, but there's nothing has been done about that. Of course, as we know, this constitutes a huge, huge red line for Russia. And the Russian reaction would be huge if that became a reality.
So basically, Ukraine have to win before they can even consider being a member. So that's not great. I mean, I hope they do win, but what about Russia? They bombed their own city, didn't they?
Yeah, this is true. This is a little bit of an embarrassing event for Russia. Of course, I mean, this was in Belgorod, which is around about 40 kilometers away from the Ukrainian border. It's not out of the ordinary for things like this to happen in Belgorod, as it's a huge, logistically important town, place for the Russian army. And in the early days of the war, there were a lot of battles there. There were a lot of attacks from the Ukrainian side. But this is a Sukhoi 34 jet that has accidentally bombed Belgorod. Now, there weren't any casualties, only 2 people injured, but there have been around about 3 dozen deaths since the start of the war in Belgorod alone. As those attacks go on, lots of Ukrainian drones, Ukrainian helicopters, Ukrainian attacks on that city. And of course, these things do happen, as we remember the Ukrainian air defense missile that landed in a border town in Poland, killing 2 farmers. These things will happen in wartime, but of course, not great to be happening in Russia. It shows a little bit of a malfunction on their side.
Now, I want to move quickly on to Putin. We've got about 30 seconds. There's a wild rumour that he's receiving chemotherapy.
Yeah, I thought you might like this story, Nana. Of course, it might be a sentiment that is shared by a lot of the West. There was a leak that a rumour, it was reported, as Vladimir Putin might be suffering from chemotherapy, and his top general, Valery Gerasimov, which is the commander of the Russian forces in Ukraine, could throw the war as he's receiving chemotherapy. And of course, that is a huge rumour. We don't know if there's any truth behind it. These rumours have been going on since even before the war. But this is part of a leak from those Pentagon documents, as we saw earlier.
I don't want to say anything horrible, but thank you very much, Danny. Look, good to talk to you. Right, let's travel over to America now. Let's have a chat to Paul Duddridge. He's the host of the Politics People podcast. Paul, welcome aboard. Tell me a bit about Biden's intentions to run again in the next election. He can't even run, can he? He can't actually run, can he? Come on, seriously. He's joking, right?
Biden is about to announce on Tuesday, the report is he's about to announce on Tuesday his intention to run for the presidency. The difference is this time he's planning to win. So Washington is all abuzz. We're looking forward to the enormous rallies. We're looking forward to people dancing with policemen in the streets. It's going to be like the Notting Hill Carnival. It's America is just too excited at the prospect of Biden. Now, Biden probably isn't aware of this yet, but when he finds out, his little face is going to light up. He's going to be so thrilled. But yes, so Biden is planning to announce, yes, it's going to be official. He's going to announce his candidacy Listen, the thing is, if he makes it to Tuesday, there's half a chance he'll make it to 2024 to actually, we say run is optimistic. He's certainly going to participate.
Well, the Republicans must be clapping their hands with joy, aren't they? What's the latest on Donald Trump? What's going on there?
Well, it's not a witch hunt. We've been told it's not a witch hunt, but he's in court again from Tuesday. Right. Jury selection starts there's another New York. Now it's a civil rape case starting on Tuesday. E. Jean Carroll, this case from the 90s. Apparently nobody knows what the date of the actual offence was, so that's a starting point. So this case, jury selection begins on Tuesday, the day that our dear leader announces his candidacy for the election. But Trump is up on 2 civil matters. One for the offence, and the second for defamation. He's being sued for libel for saying, no, this person's lying. So he's actually being done in a 2-hander in New York, where obviously justice is meted out like Smarties. So everybody's expecting a fair trial, and there's no question of a witch hunt against Donald Trump.
So what's the
He is 4 points ahead. He's 4 points ahead in the polls at the moment.
So
over
basically,
Biden.
So is this helping his campaign? It's helping him, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. Trump, see, this is what people don't understand. They're trying to fight him with politics. He's practically a religious figure. This is the thing. It's a belief system. It isn't. You can't take him down by sort of legal matters. That makes him stronger. Political matters. That makes him stronger. No, it's you couldn't have had a more look. Whoever runs in 2024, it's the not Trump candidate. Nobody's voting for Biden. Nobody voted for Joe Biden. If they voted at all for him, that's a matter of conjecture in my house. But they vote against Trump.
Willison Paul, thank you so much. Always a pleasure to talk to you. That is the fabulous Paul Dudridge, host of the Politics People podcast. Thank you so much. Take care. See you soon.
Thank you.
Live in LA. Right, so this is GB News. Stay tuned. There's so much more to come in the next hour. Good afternoon, it's fast approaching 5 o'clock. This is GB News. I'm Nana Akua. We're live on TV, online and on digital radio. For the next hour, me and my panel will be taking on some of the big topics hitting the headlines right now. In just a moment, I'll be joined by my mystery guest, who is best known for his time on The Only Way is Essex. He'll be live in the studio. Who is he? And for the Great British Debate this hour, I'm asking, should Suella Braverman ignore the European courts? But first, let's get your latest news headlines.
Thanks, Nana. Good afternoon. It's 5 o'clock. I'm Ray Addison in the GB Newsroom. An alert has been heard on most smartphones across the UK as part of a government trial. At 3 p.m, people received a message on their home screen, along with a sound and vibration for up to 10 seconds. However, the government says it will be reviewing the test after some mobile users on some networks did not receive it. Deputy Prime Minister Oliver Dowden says the alert could save people's lives in the future.
It is the case that this has been developed with the National Cyber Security Centre, which forms part of GCHQ. There will be very strict procedures in place for its authorisation, and it will only be used in a situation where your viewers' lives are in danger. I'm determined that there is a very high bar for the usage of this.
British diplomats and their families have been evacuated from Sudan amid escalating violence in the country. The Prime Minister says UK armed forces completed a complex mission in the capital, Khartoum, alongside other allies. Hundreds of civilians have died in the violent conflict between the Sudanese army and a rival paramilitary group. Foreign Secretary James Cleverly says the government is continuing to ensure the safety of British nationals who remain in the country.
We have taken the decision to temporarily close the embassy and to relocate our embassy staff. That gives us the best opportunity to project our diplomatic support back into Sudan, but we remain absolutely committed to support British nationals in Sudan. We will do so in close coordination with our international partners. But the best thing that we can do to support British nationals, and indeed everyone in Sudan, is push the generals involved in this conflict to bring it to an end, and that will remain the priority of our diplomatic focus in the region.
Diane Abbott has been suspended as a Labour MP pending an investigation after she claimed that Jewish people are not subject to racism. In an article for The Observer, the former Shadow Health Secretary said Jewish people were subjected to prejudice like Irish or red-headed people, but they did not experience racism. She's since withdrawn the remarks and apologised for any offence caused. However, the Labour Party has condemned the comments as deeply offensive and wrong. Meanwhile, London Mayor Sadiq Khan has described it as unacceptable.
I don't understand how anybody can think that, how anybody could say that, but even worse, write a letter to The Observer to publish that it's right she's apologised. The Labour Party's done the right thing to suspend her at beggar's belief.
The Home Secretary says it's crucial that the government has the power to deport migrants without being blocked by the European Court of Human Rights. In the Sunday Telegraph, Suella Braverman said for Britain to be truly sovereign, it needs to be able to, quote, decide who enters our territory. This comes after 11 small boats carrying nearly 500 people crossed the English Channel yesterday. Leader of the Liberal Democrats, Sir Ed Davey, says the government is not doing enough to tackle the issue.
The backlog of asylum applications that have not been processed is 160,000. That's the problem, and this does nothing to solve that. Liberal Democrats want this problem solved, but the government is just being in chaos and can't even do the basics right.
Sir Mo Farah has finished 9th in his final London Marathon with a time of 2 hours and 10 minutes. Kenya's Kelvin Kiptum smashed the course record to win the men's race in the second fastest time ever. Dutch athlete Sifan Hassan won the women's race. Today's London Marathon is set to be the largest ever, with at least 45,000 people taking part, Around £60 million is expected to be raised for charity. And 2 new pictures of Prince Louis have been published as he celebrates his 5th birthday today. He's been photographed being pushed in a wheelbarrow by his mum. Louis is expected to accompany his siblings in the procession from Westminster Abbey during the King's coronation next month. This is GB News. We'll bring you more as it happens. Now let's get straight back to Nana.
Good afternoon. It's just coming up to 6 minutes after 5 o'clock. This is GB News on TV, online and on digital radio. I'm Nana Akua. And for the next hour, me and my panel will be taking on some of the big topics hitting the headlines right now. This show is all about opinion. It's mine, it's theirs, and of course it's yours. We'll be debating, discussing, and at times we will disagree, but no one will be cancelled. Joining me today, it's author and broadcaster Christine Hamilton, also journalist and broadcaster Danny Kelly. Still to come, each Sunday at 5, I'm joined by a celebrity, a former MP, or someone who's had an extremely interesting career, and take a look at life after the job. We talk highs, lows and lessons learned, and what comes next on The Outside. Today, I'll be joined by a very, very special guest. In 2017, these are the clues, I'm sure you've already got it, right? In 2017, this Towie star legend tried to find love and show his tender side on Channel 4's Celebs Go Dating. Now, this celebrity has experienced it all, from TV stardom to addiction and even a staggering 14-stone weight loss. But can you guess who he is? Have you got it? Send me a message, go on. gbnews@gbnews.uk or tweet me at gbnews. He's actually here in the studio. Then, for the Great British Debate this hour, I'm asking, should Suella Braverman ignore the European courts? Now, according to the reports, the Home Secretary, Suella Braverman, is preparing to give the government the necessary powers to ignore temporary injunctions issued by the European Court of Human Rights that stop deportation flights taking off to Rwanda. But should she be allowed to do that? Send me your thoughts as ever. gbviews@gbnews.uk or tweet me at gbnews. So now it's time for this week's Outside. Now it's coming up to 7 minutes after 5. You've just joined me. Welcome on board. I'm Nana Akua. This is GB News. I'm joined by a very, very special guest. Now, he has been at the forefront of British pop culture after appearing as a regular on The Only Way is Essex from 2010 to 2018. My reality TV star has a huge online presence with nearly 1 million followers on Instagram. My mystery guest has lost more than 14 stone after battling with various addictions throughout his life. His doctors warned him that he was on death row and needed to make serious changes to his lifestyle. He was also known to be best friends with fellow reality star Mark Wright, and viewers enjoyed watching their on-screen antics. He's been extremely outspoken about his mental health and how it's affected his eating habits and his addictions. Please welcome the lovely James Argent to the studio. James!
Hello.
Welcome, it's really good to meet you.
No, thanks for having me, it's good to be here.
You know, I was like a real fan of The Only Way is Essex. I loved it. I swear that I wrote it, though, because I used to live in Essex, and my friend and I talked about this script. We used to go out clubbing and drinking and everything. We were like, there should be a show about this. And literally 2 years later, there was.
Yes,
and
yes.
that was really where we all found you and saw you. Talk to me about...
Absolutely.
What was your life been like, and how did you get to that stage where you ended up on that show?
Yes, I think Towie started back in, was it 2010?
Oh, years ago.
I think it was 2010, so yes, about 13 years ago now.
God.
And yeah, it's just all like young adults from a certain part of Essex, you know, like based around kind of like family and friends and relationships and stuff like that. And yeah, it kind of changed all our lives.
Was it like Shenfield and that sort of area, Billericay?
Yeah, I mean...
not Billericay, that's further down, but Shenfield...
Yeah, I mean, there's
that way.
part of the shows was kind of based more so like Brentwood, Shenfield, that kind of way, but then it was also heavily based in my part of Essex, which is like on the border of East London, right. So like Chigwell, Woodford Green, Buckhurst-Hill, Loughton. Yeah.
So what were you doing before that? I mean, where were you born? What's your childhood?
I was born in Whips Cross Hospital in East London, Leytonstone. But you know, I was raised kind of slightly more into Essex, Woodford Green. And yeah, I before Towie, I mean, I was a young man going from job to job. 1 minute I was babysitting, then I was working in Waitrose.
Really?
Then I was selling Christmas trees. I think I did stockbroking, worked at a jeweller's, financial advisors, you name it, I tried it. But I went from job to job and I never really, you know, found anything that I really really loved or was good at, but my passion was always kind of performing and entertaining. I used to do a lot of musical theatre when I was younger, and I always wanted to be a wedding singer. So yeah, I kind of, when Towie come along, I just kind of saw it as an opportunity that I might be able to get some bookings off the back of it.
How did you get involved in it then? So what did you do? Was there an audition?
No, I mean, I'll be honest with you, the reason how I got on Tower was pretty much being Mark Wright's best friend. Yeah. I mean, Mark was cast for the show. They loved him and his family and stuff, and, you know, they wanted to feature one of Mark's closest friends, and that was me. I started off just, you know, I suppose I was due to be Mark's sidekick, someone for him to have a chat with, go shopping with, and ended up becoming a central main character in my own right.
Did you say he was running the marathon today?
Mark was running the marathon today alongside his brother Josh and his mum, mum and dad, Carol Mark. They also, they were walking the marathons. I was there earlier. 1 minute I was at West Ferry, then I was at Canary Wharf, then I was at the finish line at the Mall, and then the Mall or the Mall, I don't know.
Mall, whatever, the Mall.
And then, yeah, and then we've just met up for a soft drink, and now I've rushed and just about got here on time. So it's been a crazy day, but I'm happy to be here. I actually ran the marathon myself in 2012, so I know kind of how difficult it is and what a sense of achievement it is when you get that, you know, get to the finish line.
I ran it in 1999. I thought I'll do it at the turn of the century. I did it, and I ran 21.6 miles without stopping. I did no training.
Wow.
I shouldn't have done that. Then I thought, well, I've just run 26 miles. I might as well just do the last bit, and I did.
Well done.
It was a tough thing.
Amazing. Tough, yeah.
And for days you'll be walking like in a funny way, but you wear your medal so people understand why you're walking like that.
Straight on the social media.
So my big memory of you in Anyway is Essex was your relationship with Gemma Collins. Because I was always thinking that you were actually in love with each other. Were you? Was that genuine? It looked like you were really...
I mean, I had two relationships, both on the Only Way is Essex, and both of them were genuine, and they were both real relationships. And obviously my friendship with Mark Wright was completely real. He's my best friend, so... Yeah.
Do they make it up though? Like, do you have to ham up the scene? So I'm imagining that they say, "Okay, now do this or do that," or are these genuine interactions that are happening there?
No. When I was on Towie, it was very authentic and real. I think that was why it was so successful. I don't really know if that's so much the case now. But yeah, like we was obviously, you know, we had. We were put into various situations and stuff, and we were possibly given topics to discuss, but everything we kind of said we had to be accountable for and responsible for. It was our own opinions and our own reactions, and it was pretty real, as real as it could be.
It's a really good springboard, because you've done a lot of things after that, haven't you?
I've been fortunate, yeah. I've managed to kind of... You know, I had many years on Towie, but I've also managed to take part in lots of other shows and learn new skills and challenges and stuff. But I kind of really, more than anything, Towie's given me an opportunity to really put together a fantastic kind of wedding band, party band, function band. You know, we're doing gigs all up and down the country in Spain, and we're performing at people's weddings.
What's your band called?
The Arge Band.
The Arge Band, yeah. I should have guessed that.
The Arge Band, so I'm very proud of it. I'm the lead singer of the Arge Band, and yeah, I'm very proud of it.
A little bit of something that you might sing? Can you sing a little bit?
Not at the moment, no. But if you want to get the band back on to do a special performance, we would absolutely...
We've got a little bit of music.
We'd absolutely love to, because the thing is now, like, you know, I had great times on television and Towie, and I'm still in and out. I've got quite a few things coming up, but, you know, if people say to me now, you know, what do you do, what's your profession, the first thing I'll say now, you know, I won't say reality TV star or TV personality, I'll say I'm a wedding singer.
You're a wedding singer.
Yeah, and I'm proud of that.
But throughout your career, we have seen you battle with your weight. That's been a big thing. In fact, I wrote a piece in the Daily Mail about people, if you're fat, it's your own fault.
Okay.
I know there's obviously a few people who there might be something wrong with them where they put on weight, but that's a very, very small portion. So for you, what was it about, you know, the fact that you kept losing weight and putting on weight, and why were you sort of drawn to that kind of behaviour pattern?
Yeah, I mean, I had a bad relationship with food and even exercise. I kind of would either do no exercise at all and binge eat and overeat. Whether that was for like comfort or whether that was to act out on food and feelings and stuff, or I would kind of starve myself and train 3 times a day. So I never had a healthy balance with exercise or food. So I'd forever yo-yoing. I was either morbidly obese, or I'd be, you know, for a year, and then I'd be really slim for the other year. Then I'd go back up and down. It was kind of, I was constantly yo-yoing. And I decided about 2 years ago now to get gastric sleeve surgery, which has really helped me with portion control. And then, you know, ever since then, I haven't looked back, and now I've got a healthy relationship, not only with food but also with exercise, and I'm in a good place, in a good position.
Well, you look very good.
Thank you. I feel good.
You do look good, but it must have been, you know, because I always wonder how people, when you're getting bigger and bigger and bigger, you must get more and more depressed. What was it that was triggering you to carry on eating in the way that you were, knowing what it was doing to you?
Yeah, I think I definitely had some like underlying issues. I kind of struggled. I suppose loneliness and boredom, and I kind of didn't really have a very good routine and structure, and I definitely used food to act out, you know, when I wanted comforting or on feelings, and lockdown for me wasn't easy. I remember, you know, some people really got into their exercise and they'd be doing at-home workouts, or other people really quite struggled, and I think, I was one of those who struggled.
Some people went from fit to fat, others went from fat to fit.
Yeah.
And I don't know where I sat in there. I just sort of, I kind of slightly enjoyed the lockdowns at the beginning. At the beginning it was fine, because with that lovely weather and everything, but then it got a bit much, and then it was time to stop, really, it was. So I also know that obviously you've had to kick drug addiction as well. I mean, that must have been a tough time for you.
Yeah, definitely, yeah. I battled with that for a number of years. But I got through it, and I'm doing all right. I'm doing well. I'm clean and sober. I have been for a long time now, and I'm in a good place.
Yeah, because you do look well, and I know that you said that you've got this. You're a wedding singer now, and that is something that you obviously started doing, and you clearly love doing it. So the things that you've achieved, has your reality exceeded your dreams? So in your head, did you think you'd be here?
I mean, when I first started Towie, I just thought, I wonder if I'll be able to get a few gigs off the back of it. I wonder if I'll be able to save up and, you know, get myself my own property or something like that, or be able to get my own apartment and pay the rent and stuff. So yeah, I suppose, I have exceeded expectations, and I'm proud of what I've achieved, and yeah.
And do you have a supportive family around you as well?
Yeah, I've got a fantastic family. I've just recently took my mum away on holiday, so me and her had a mum and son bonding holiday trip together, which meant the world to her, and that was really, really special. You know, once you get in a good place and get better, it's nice that you can kind of do these things and make these moments and have memories to cherish, because I wouldn't be able to do these things if I was in a bad place.
If you had one bit of advice to give somebody who's sort of maybe yo-yoing with their diet and going through kind of similar things, like addiction and dealing with that, what would you say to them?
I think you come to a point where you're going to need to ask for help. Sometimes friends and family, they want to step in and they want to try and help you and tell you what to do, but you've got to really, really want to do it yourself. And I just think that, it is like, there's been other, like, whoever it is, there's people out there that, can inspire you, and, not all stories have to end in like tragedy and stuff. Like, there are some people can really turn things around, and, it's not all.
So who is your inspiration then? You said some people inspire you. If you could mention somebody who inspires you?
I feel like in terms of maybe like weight loss, I think before I started my weight loss journey, I was heavily inspired by like Tyson Fury.
Really?
Yeah, because Tyson, he's a friend of mine. I haven't seen him for a while, but I really like Tyson. He's someone who struggled with weight, with drink and stuff like that, and he managed to turn his life around and go on to become a two-time world champion boxer. So that's, to me, is like the ultimate comeback story, and that kind of inspired me amongst many others. So I definitely say Tyson Fury.
Well, let's have a word with him. Get him on this show. I'd love to speak to him as well. So what's next for you then? Where can we see you? Where can people pay for you to become a wedding singer there?
Absolutely. If anyone wants a wedding band, function band, any events, birthday parties, bar mitzvahs, you name it, we do it. We'll be there we'll get the party started. So yeah, that's what I'm doing. I have got a few new shows coming out this year that I'm excited about.
Can you say what they are?
I can't say, but there's a couple. One on Channel 4.
Okay.
Don't
take any clothes off or anything, are you?
One on Channel 4, one on E4. They'll be coming out this year, so I'm quite proud of those.
Well, listen, I've got to
Watch this space.
Watch this space, and don't forget, if you're looking for a wedding singer, he's your man.
I'm the man.
It's such a pleasure to see you. It's really good to see you looking so well.
Thanks for having me.
Keep doing what you're doing, because it's obviously working for you. And we appreciate you coming in.
Cheers.
That is the fabulous James Argent. He's a television star. This was, of course, outside, but coming up, it's the Great British Debate this hour. And I'm asking, should Suella Braverman ignore the European courts? According to reports, Home Secretary Suella Braverman is preparing to give the government the necessary powers to ignore temporary injunctions issued by the European Court of Human Rights to stop the deportation flights taking off to Rwanda. So should she ignore the ECHR? You won't want to miss that. It's on the way next.
It's all about family, being in people's living rooms, all the interaction and getting to know who our viewers and listeners are.
When I was young, my dad used to say, Nana, stop arguing. I wanted an outlet that would enable me to give my opinion.
People are going through a really hard time right now, and I know that you don't feel like you're being listened to by the establishment. I came to GB News because it's the People's Channel, and I want the audience to have their say on the events of the day.
We're dynamic. We do something different. Democracy shows that the wisdom of the nation is in its people.
I get to travel to find out what the story is from a personal perspective.
The British people aren't fools. We know when we're not being told the full story.
We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this.
It's the best country in the world.
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent your views.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching. Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
So Dubes & Co, we tackle the issues of the day with real, robust debate, both sides of the fence, battling it out with me in the middle with my forthright opinions and views. And often really interesting things happen because you start with a position and then by the end of the debate you find actually, well, I might not have thought about that one.
What we need in this country is 2 new political parties.
You should maybe think about doing a 2024 calendar. I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm keeping you company right through until 7 o'clock this evening.
GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's watching.
Start the day with GB News.
We catch up on all the big stories you didn't hear the night before.
And take a look at what the world's talking about this morning. That's right, Monday to Thursdays from 6 o'clock. It's Breakfast with Eamon and Isabel.
Straight after breakfast, join us, Bev Turner and Andrew Pearce. We're going to take you through till noon.
We'll be tackling the big topics of the day, including the things that the other channels just won't talk about. If it's happening here. Wake up to mornings on GB News, the People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
I'm Simon Evans. Join me on GB News for Headliners at 11 p.m.
What's the scoop?
I'll be joined by 2 of the country's top comedians.
That's right.
As we take a look at tomorrow's newspapers tonight.
We're going to get into trouble.
If it's a big story, we'll be covering it.
Spill some tea on him.
There we go.
But we'll also have some fun.
I wouldn't stick up a bank.
My father didn't love me.
So anyway, Headliners every night from 11 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel. Saturday nights on GB News.
From 6 p.m, I'll give you my unique take on the world today.
Then at 7, it's me, Calvin Robinson, with my Common Sense Crusade.
New to GB News is the Saturday 5.
5 times the opinion. Join us every Saturday from 8 p.m. as we debate the week's stories.
With us 4, plus a special guest.
And at 9, of course, it's Mark Dolan Tonight.
Saturday nights on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
To GB News.
Good afternoon. If you just joined me, where on earth have you been? You missed James Argent. Come on, that was outside, but we've got a great guest for you next week as well, so be ready for that one. But it's 23 minutes after 5 o'clock. This is GB News on TV, online and on digital radio. It's time for the Great British Debate this hour, and I'm asking, should Suella Braverman ignore the European courts? In a latest attempt to begin deporting illegal immigrants to Rwanda, Home Secretary Suella Braverman is preparing to give the government the necessary powers to ignore temporary injunctions issued by the European Court of Human Rights. That's to stop deportation of flights taking off. Now, the changes to the illegal migrations bill, and the bill isn't illegal, but that is what they've called it, which returns to the Commons for its final report stage this week, is an attempt to appease around about 60 Conservative MPs who had demanded that the government take a tougher approach against the ECHR. Now, this is because a single ECHR judge used to a so-called Rule 39 order to the 11th hour last June to stop the first deportation flights to Rwanda. If the bill passes, Braverman will have the powers to detain anyone entering the UK illegally and swiftly remove them either to their own country or a safe third country like Rwanda, and there will be virtually no way for them to fight deportation on human rights. But is it right? So for the Great British Debate this hour, I'm asking, should Suella Braverman ignore the European courts? Right. Joining me now is Matthew Stadlen, he's a political commentator, Stephen Wolfe, Director for the Centre of Migration and Economic Prosperity, Rebecca Reid, author and broadcaster, and David Haig, international rights lawyer, human rights lawyer. David, I'm going to ask you first. Is Suella Braverman able to actually do this? Because all these things that they say they're going to do, turns out they can't actually do them, even if she did get rid of the ECHR.
Well, she can go. Good afternoon, Nana. Good afternoon, everyone. So she can certainly pass the law in the UK. That's something that, provided it goes through the House of Parliament here. So it certainly can do that here. But is it going to get stuck in court battles in England and the ECHR? I'm sure it will. So she can certainly pass the law, but I think you're going to find it getting bound up, much like the Rwanda policy did.
See, that's the worry. There's all this talk about doing this and doing that, but yet it doesn't sound like it's actually going to make any difference whatsoever. Can I bring in Stephen Wolfe? He's the director of the Centre for Migration. Stephen, what's your view on it?
Well, I think it's obviously a very important part for the government to try and persuade those people in the north of England that they are actually doing whatever they can to ensure that the flights to Rwanda will go ahead. We also have to consider the fact that the interim judgments of Article 39 aren't used that really very much. There have been only 7 out of 180 requests for interim measures over the past 3 years. And the most important of those, for the government's perspective, was that of the Rwanda flights. So you're looking at a European court jurisprudence that doesn't grant too many, but when they do, they are significant. And in this case, she needs to persuade those in Parliament that she's doing something strongly, and she needs to persuade those in the voting areas she's doing something strong as well.
She's going to have a tough job. This is my worry, even if she does get out of the ECHR, whether it'll actually matter. Matthew Stadlen, your view.
My real worry here is that Suella Braverman and this Tory government, and it's not the first time, are trashing our reputation for a country that not only upholds the rule of law, but is a champion of the rule of law around the world. It is so important for our international reputation that we obey international law. It is possible, as we've already heard, for the government to legislate as it wishes, as long as it passes things through Parliament. Parliament is sovereign. But if it is trying to legislate its way out of its responsibilities to international law, that's a massive problem. If she really wants to do this, what she'd need to do, I suspect, is get us as a country to withdraw from the European Court of Human Rights. I don't think she's brave enough to try to do that. And if she does try to do it, I hope very much she doesn't succeed, because it underpins that court. It underpins human rights on the European continent. And we Brits were key players in establishing it in the early 1950s in the aftermath of the Second World War.
Rebecca Reid.
Yeah, the idea that we should leave the ECHR is incredibly scary and depressing. I don't know about you, but I love human rights. I like having them. I like being part of the support system for them. And I think it's very risky that if we leave, it might come crumbling down for other countries as well. I just refuse to be so angry about some people taking access to this country that isn't legally theirs, that I want to screw everybody else in this country over by reducing our access to properly legislated human rights organisations. I think what's happened here is that Suella, like her predecessor Priti, has made a habit of saying big tough things and achieving very little. And what they do is they look for a scapegoat. So let's just say that it's because of the ECHR, blame that. But most people in this country, myself included until I did the Google when we started talking about this, don't know what it means. Therefore, it's an easy scapegoat, something to blame. Let's just say it's that. It's not my fault. Doesn't matter that I'm getting nothing done. I'm just saying mean things.
Well, Stephen, if she manages to do this, will it actually... I just want to see if she can actually then effectively get her Rwanda plan off the ground. Do you think that there could be a chance that if she does this is actually the problem?
Well, can I reflect firstly on the previous two speakers about human rights? Firstly, leaving the European Courts of Human Rights will not leave Britain without human rights. We've had them since our common law, and we've worked pretty hard as a nation to enshrine that in our own common law as legislation. And without a doubt, I don't think that would reduce the amount of human rights in this country at all. Is she able and capable of achieving it without leaving the European Court of Human Rights? This is what the Government Lawyers Department has been trying to achieve for quite some time. And I believe that under the illegal migration bill, they've done a very significant move to try and remain within the European Courts of Human Rights. And as I mentioned, there are very few occasions when it's actually used. But I do suspect that if there is another situation like the interim measure that was used against Rwanda, which is a policy that can go ahead, then she will use it because the political imperative is too significant to fail.
Interesting. David, what do you think?
I think here one of the most concerning things is if this does get through and it does pass, effectively what we've got is a minister that's unable to ignore a court order in certain circumstances. And whether it's a European court or whether it's an English court or a Scottish court, whatever it may be, that should never be allowed to happen from a principle of protection of rule of law. And we saw recently the former Lord Chief Justice, Lord Thomas, saying that. That's not a European judge saying that. That's a former head of the English court saying we should not enable ministers to look the other way and ignore court orders. Because where will that end? Will that start going down into domestic courts if we start enabling that with the ECHR? So whilst I, like some of your other guests, want to remain in the European courts, if we are going to put a situation in where we're able to look the other way and ignore certain court orders, then surely it's better to come out of that rather than effectively having, again, constitutional vandalism of the rule of law.
Interesting stuff. Matthew Stadlen.
Yeah, I just want to say that I think the Rwanda flights, let's not get overly distracted. The Rwanda flights are optics on the part of Suella Braverman and this government. They are not, even if they were to go ahead, going to solve the crisis of the Channel. We are seeing people die attempting to get to this country. They will continue to do so, even if a few flights go off to Rwanda. There is no way that Rwanda will accept the sorts of numbers and that we will get our act together sufficiently to send people from the Channel to Rwanda. This is an attempt by the government to look ahead of the next election as though it is getting a grip on an issue that it has decided is toxic. It seems to me one of the very few issues that the Tories are confident of fighting the next general election on, given the failures of the economy, the failures of the health service, and so forth. And yet it is a red herring, because, as I say, even if she gets one up on the European Court of Human Rights, and I don't think that's realistic in the slightest, we aren't going to be able to send nearly enough people to Rwanda, even if you thought it was a good idea to send human beings to Rwanda, and I don't.
Well, she's talked about safe and legal routes as well there. Rebecca?
Yeah, I mean, I couldn't agree more, honestly. It's punitive, it's showing off, it's performative, it's what's the expression that everybody on here loves? Virtue signalling, except it's not a virtue to send people to a country where they have no connection and no infrastructure and no family. Also, it's a really illogical plan on the basis that if you object to paying for asylum seekers to live, why would you then be like, fine, I'll pay for them to live in Rwanda? I don't understand who in this country is pleased by this idea. Safe and legal routes, understanding when this problem is happening, proper diplomacy, making friends with France again a bit more, making that work better. I mean, look, I'm not a politician, but I'm thinking these might be better ideas than something like putting them all on barges, because at the moment it sometimes seems like they've had a meeting and they've got no bad ideas, everything goes on the whiteboard, and then they've just presented all of that to the actual country.
Well, that's better than having no ideas whatsoever, though. I mean, look at the Labour Party. I haven't heard anything decent from them either. Rebecca Reid, thank you so much. Really good to talk to you. She's an author and broadcaster. David Haig, he's an international human rights lawyer. Matthew Stadlen, political commentator. And Stephen Wolfe, director for the Centre for Migration and Economic Prosperity. Thank you so much for your thoughts. Well, what do you think about that? Get in touch, gbviews@gbnews.uk. You're with me. I'm Nana Akua. This is GB News on TV, online and on digital radio. On the way, we'll continue with our great British debate this hour. And I'm asking, should Suella Braverman ignore the European courts? You'll hear the thoughts of my panel, author and broadcaster Christine Hamilton and journalist and broadcaster Danny Kelly. But first, let's get your latest news headlines.
(5:33). I'm Ray Addison. The government is launching a review to find out why some mobile phone users did not receive today's emergency test alert. At 3 p.m, most people received a message on their home screen, along with a sound and vibration for up to 10 seconds. However, some mobile users on some networks, including 3, did not. Some people have also posted on social media to say they've not been able to make or receive calls since the alarm. British diplomats and their families have been evacuated from Sudan amid escalating violence in the country. The Prime Minister says UK armed forces completed a complex mission in the capital, Khartoum, alongside other allies. Hundreds of civilians have died in the violent conflict between the Sudanese army and a rival paramilitary group. Diane Abbott has been suspended as a Labour MP pending an investigation after she claimed that Jewish people are not subject to racism. In an article for The Observer, the former Shadow Health Secretary said Jewish people experienced prejudice like Irish or red-headed people, but they did not experience racism. She's since withdrawn the remarks and apologised for any offence caused. However, the Labour Party is calling it deeply offensive and wrong. The Home Secretary says it's crucial that the government has the power to deport migrants without being blocked by the European Court of Human Rights. In the Sunday Telegraph, Suella Braverman said for Britain to be truly sovereign, it needs to be able to decide who enters our territory. This comes after 11 small boats carrying nearly 500 people crossed the English Channel yesterday. On TV, online, on DAB+ radio and on TuneIn 2, this is GB News. Back now to Nana.
So loads more still to come, including our Supplement Sunday, where we'll be discussing Prince Louis' 5th birthday, human seagull deterrence, and much, much more. Stay tuned.
I joined GB News because I was sick and tired of not hearing my views being represented, not just mine, but so many people that I knew and spoke to.
I just couldn't get my voice out there. I couldn't say anything. I couldn't do anything. Whatever the narrative was, I kind of had to follow it.
GB News is there to provide a voice for those who have been ignored by the establishment media. We think different things, we've got a different style.
GB News is here to be optimistic and positive about the future.
It's real kind of dynamic and flowing, with the audience very much at the heart of it, like a big family.
Here at GB News, we talk about the things that matter to you.
Hearing the voices from right across our towns and cities, especially our towns.
All sides of the argument represented with a heavy dose of opinion.
We're on a mission here to make a difference.
And the GB News family really is here for you, and whatever time of day you can watch or listen.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Westminster is going around in ever-decreasing circles, followed by the media. Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it? Join me at 7 p.m, Mondays to Thursdays on Farage. Here on GB News, we will have open, rational debate. We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this. Join us here on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain is watching.
You've probably seen politicians interviewed 1,000 times, but we do it differently. We find out who they really are, we don't shout, we chat, and hopefully we bring a bit of light, not just heat.
Did you
All
know, Kate
sorts of
Moss?
Apparently.
Do you have a pair of jeans or a pair of jeans?
No, of course I don't. What would I do with them?
My friends are like, oh my God, what's she doing now?
Join me every Sunday at 6 for Gloria Meets, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Jacob Rees-Mogg, the Member of Parliament for North East Somerset and a former government minister. For years, I've walked the corridors of power in both Westminster and the City of London. We need to have the arguments, the discussions on how we make it better.
Crop failures, famine, war, suffering on a scale completely unimaginable.
We are putting the cart before the horse. As Charles I said at the scaffold, he was the true defender of liberty.
Yeah, I've completely derailed the conversation.
Join me Monday to Thursday at 8 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
New to GB News is the Saturday 5.
Join us every Saturday from 8 p.m. as we debate the week's stories. Right, folks, that was a spicy one, wasn't it?
With us four, plus a special guest.
Sometimes she has to stick her foot in it. Sometimes she has to say things as they are.
Sometimes I think we should keep the refugees and send the pensioners to Rwanda. Then we'd be in a much better state.
Well, Benjamin, that is...
The Saturday 5. Saturday nights from 8. Only on GB News, the People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon. It's just coming up to 39 minutes after 5 o'clock. This is GB News. We are the People's Channel. I'm Nana Akua. And it's time now for our Great British Debate this hour. And I'm asking, should Suella Braverman ignore the European courts? Home Secretary Suella Braverman is preparing to give the government the necessary powers to ignore temporary injunctions issued by the European Courts of Human Rights that stop deportation flights to Rwanda. Now, the changes to the illegal migrations bill is an attempt to appease around 60 Conservative MPs who had demanded that the government take a tougher approach against the ECHR. So the question is she right? For the Great British Debate this hour, I'm asking, should Suella Braverman ignore the European courts? Let's see what my panel make of that. I'm joined by Christine Hamilton and Danny Kelly. Right, Christine, I'll go to you, Danny Kelly.
Thank you. What a treat. What's the question? Should we leave the ECHR?
No, should Suella Braverman ignore them? So we've got the Rule 39 where she can just have a veto so that we can ignore what they say.
I'm torn. I was listening intently to that four-panel interview. And before some of the contributors, I thought that, yes, we need to leave the ECHR as a deterrent. But then Matthew said something that I think is quite accurate. He says that it's not going to stop people jumping on dinghies. OK, so if it's not going to work, and if the Rwanda plan, we're only going to be able to fly off a few hundred every fortnight to Rwanda, and they're only going to accept a finite amount of people as well. So 500 people came over to the UK yesterday on dinghies, 40-odd thousand last year. And yes, potentially it's life-threatening, but if you look at the odds, unfortunately, I think, say, 10 or 12 people have died and 40 or 50,000 people. So it's odds on that you're not going to die. So it's not as dangerous a crossing as a lot of people would have you believe. So the hysteria, and there's a bit of hysteria coming from Rebecca, I think, about, I quite like human rights and it's going to crumble away. I think we're a decent society. And I think that the United Kingdom don't need the ECHR to give people human rights. So I'm conflicted because what's the point of leaving if the deterrent isn't going to work, which was Matthew's point, and if it's not going to work, why are we leaving?
But then you need some sort of deterrent, and if it does work, it might work.
If it works, then I'm with you. Yeah.
Christine?
Well, I just think we should leave as a matter of principle. I mean, we don't need it anymore. The situation nowadays is totally different from the 1950, I think it was, when it came in, when it was to stop countries sliding into the horrors of fascism and communism. You know, that doesn't apply to this country, does it? And we now have our own Supreme Court, we have our own judges, and we are perfectly capable, in my opinion, of standing up for human rights in this country. And we don't need judges from Azerbaijan and Montenegro or wherever these countries are telling us what to do. We simply don't need them anymore, so we should get out. It is irrelevant to us in this country. We are perfectly capable of upholding human rights. For heaven's sake, over the course of centuries, we have been regarded as a bastion of liberty.
Yeah, but you could say that about our NHS, and look how embarrassing that turned out to be.
And we're not talking about the NHS. And, you know, we will be joining countries like New Zealand, Australia, America, Canada.
Yeah.
We are not going to be... People say, oh, you'll be joining places like Russia. Yes, but we will also be joining countries that we do regard...
Part of the argument is our reputation around the world. I think Matthew said that, you know, our standing, our reputation, it will go down and deteriorate.
No,
I don't think that's... First of all, I don't think that's correct, and I don't see the relevance of it. I think Britain is greater than just us leaving the ECHR. I don't think people around the world will think, oh, those little Englanders again. No. You know, we are Great Britain. We're more than capable of looking after people's human rights. Exactly. If he's right that it's not going to work as a deterrent, it's a bit, well, what's the point?
But do we really need it anyway? I mean, as Christine said, I mean, if we then leave it, we're down to our own devices, which is what kind of Brexit was.
And, you're hardcore Brexiteer, aren't you?
But look at the way we've... I mean, look, I wanted us to be in charge of our own laws, our own rules and everything, but I'm watching the politicians, the way they're behaving, and I'm sort of thinking... I mean, it's not that I prefer the European courts or anything, but I'm looking at the way they're behaving and I'm wondering whether they'll actually be capable of...
May I ask, Christine?
That's what worries me.
Christine, you're a hardcore Brexiteer, so you don't want...
Well, hang on.
You want to be
hardcore implies, that I'm a sort of nut job.
I'll qualify
I am a Brexiteer.
No, it doesn't imply you're a nut job at all.
It is a bit. I mean,
well, that's not how it... That's not how... OK, but that's... Yeah, but you're a purist Brexiteer.
Yes, yes.
Well, OK, purist, hardcore...
Getting back our own sovereignty and power over our own rules, etc., was a major part of it for me.
Yeah, but that was the point of my question. It's to do with purist autonomy.
Okay, I'm hardcore.
There you go.
But do you think our politicians are capable of dealing with... Do you think our legal system is capable? I mean, look at the way the courts deal with sentencing and all sorts of things. I mean, we are in a bit of a mess. Do you think we're capable of managing it? I'd like to think we are. I want us to be doing everything ourselves, but...
I think I would have more confidence in our legal system and the judges that throws up than I would have in the unelected people who are thrown up in other parts of Europe who come under the whatever it is. ECHR. I would have much more confidence. And yes, of course, I don't agree with all their decisions, and nobody ever would in a democratic society. But I would put my money on the British judges as opposed to those from other places.
For people who cannot trust GB legislation to look after human rights, then they're unhinged.
They're unhinged.
There's something unhinged about that.
OK, well, you think I'm unhinged then. Thanks, Danny. No, I do.
You don't trust the British
I'm just
legal
saying,
system.
I'm just looking at it and saying, look, I would rather that we weren't in the ECHR, if I'm totally honest. I don't think we need it. I agree with you, Christine, on that side of things, but I've also looked at the way our legal systems have run, and sometimes I think that we need to start looking at processes and things that we have in this country.
Oh, but that's a different argument.
Because, listen, what it is if we leave that, we've still got all this, and I call it an industry of migration, sort of industry of lawyers who will oppose all different charges. And I'm just feeling that it might not make any difference. We'll still have legal challenges being opposed. We'll still have this touring. I'm thinking, will we be able to...
It's healthy to have legal challenges.
No, but it's constant. It's all the
healthy.
time. No, but this is like Keir Starmer when he signed that letter along with 41 other people to not let the flight take off, and then this person had committed crimes, and it's just... I don't know whether we will...
Oh, that was
so I'm saying...
Jamaican fella.
Even if we're not with ECHR, we are stopping ourselves anyway.
Yes, but there is a monumental industry that has grown up through the ECHR with lawyers. Straight away they go to the court. I mean, one person was saved from deportation because of his cat. That was his human right in this country because he had a cat. Now, excuse me, that is... nonsense.
Yeah, but other countries who are within it...
That would never have happened under the British...
Yeah, but it feels like other countries who are within it still manage to deport people better than we did. So I think we have an issue.
We're a nation of animal lovers. It would have done it under the British.
Let's find out what the other thing...
That's another issue, whether we
that's what I mean, though. If we leave it, we've still got ourselves to blame, and we've been letting people stay anyway, even though other countries wouldn't
That's the whole point. You should blame yourself, because you'll then be responsible.
But we change it. We won't. We'll just get rid of them. Right, this show's nothing without you and your views. Let's welcome some of our great British voices. Their opportunity to be on the show. Tell us what they think about the topics we're discussing. I've got two of you today. I'm going to start with Miranda Richardson from Northamptonshire. Not the Miranda Richardson, but Miranda Richardson. Miranda, what do you think?
Good afternoon, Nana. Hi. Do you know what? I'm kind of with Danny a little bit on this one, a little bit conflicted. I do think that, as a nation, we are perfectly capable of making sure people's human rights are upheld. And actually, as far as our court system goes, if we necessarily didn't have the ties that we do to the ECHR and everything that goes on, we might be able to speed up some of those processes that tie us in not. So I think getting out of it for us is potentially the right thing to do, because we are capable. We do have one of the best legal systems in the world. We know that. We are very good at what we do, but we are quite often caught up in a lot of other places red tape. And that then holds the processes down. So I think in order for us to be able to move on and do what we do well, we should be able to come out of it.
Well, we should be able to, but we seem to tie ourselves up in knots. John Reid from Kidderminster. John, what do you think?
Yeah, good afternoon, Nana. Well, for once, for the first time in a long time, I found myself in broad agreement with your two studio guests, which for me is quite unusual. I'm not actually an expert on the court system. I know a little bit about the UK court, but not the European court. But thinking back, I voted for Brexit. I voted to come out of Europe because I wanted to bring back the power, the ultimate power of the law into our highest court. And I didn't want any Europeans dabbling. I didn't feel that they were in a good position to make decisions on what we should be making. So I wanted to go back to the status quo. But to answer Sue Braverman's thing, or Braverman, however she likes to say this thing, I wouldn't trust her at making me a cup of tea. So the sooner she goes, the better, as far as I'm concerned.
Oh, listen, thank you very much. Thank you, John in Kidderminster. Lovely to talk to you. And Miranda in Northamptonshire. Thank you so much. Lovely to talk to you. There's our Great British Voices. Now, today I've been asking, should Suella Braverman ignore the European courts? Lots of you have been getting in touch with your thoughts. Angie says, yes, Suella Braverman should ignore the European courts. She should just start putting them on planes for Rwanda. Kathy says, Suella is spot on. I just hope that she succeeds this time round. And Jason says, yes, otherwise, what was the point of Brexit? And Chris says, yes, she should take back control, Suella. Yeah, I'm with you. I'm just hoping that we don't just trip ourselves up in our own courts, because that's what worries me. But today, of course, it's the 23rd of April, and it marks St George's Day. St George's is England's patron saint and the namesake for England's flag, the St George Cross. Whilst Ireland celebrates St Patrick's Day and Scotland has St Andrew's Day, both of which are bank holidays in England, nationalism isn't truly celebrated. So should we be proud to be English? So I'm going to ask you that, Christine.
I'm extremely proud of my 3/4 English bit, and I'm very proud also of my 1/4 Welsh bit.
Lovely.
So, yes, I'm very, very proud. I'm proud of being British, extremely proud of being British, and I think national pride is very important.
Yeah, I'm a proud Scouser and I'm a proud Brit, but most importantly, I'm a proud Englishman. I think England is a great country. That's why 50,000 people get on dinghies every year to try to get it.
I was going to say that, of course they do. Right, well, now it's time for something on that bombshell. My panel and I are discussing some of the news that caught their eye. Joining me, if you just tuned in, is author and broadcaster Christine Hamilton, also broadcaster and journalist Danny Kelly. Let's start with Danny's supplement, which is about a zoo trying to recruit human seagull deterrents.
This is a great story.
It's bonkers.
It is. Basically, it made a great picture in the papers. Basically, this is Blackpool Zoo. Anyone who's been to Blackpool, like any seaside resort, knows what a menace the seagulls are.
Yeah, they come
so the seagulls are swooping down and they're taking all the food out of the enclosures. And so what they're doing, they want people, honestly, men and women with a good sense of humour, to wear bird suits and to go around Blackpool Zoo flapping to scare off those pesky seagulls. That when they dive bomb, I've been to St Ives in Cornwall. You walk around with a bag of chips.
Yes.
I'm not kidding you. They will dive bomb and swoop and take your chips, and then you drop your chips, and then it's like this massive, almost like an ant's nest of seagulls fighting for your chips.
A paid job, or just for people who want a bit of fun?
Why are you thinking of going for it? I don't know. But funnily enough, it didn't give the terms and conditions of this. But do you know what? I thought this was maybe even the legacy of an April Fool gag. But what great publicity! This could be a PR stunt. I would make a great seagull scarer.
You would, yeah.
About 10 foot tall.
Well, no, I think they'd all come for you. They're very hungry.
In your dreams.
Right, Christine, you've got a supplement. What's yours?
What I wanted everybody to see was the unbelievable YouTube video, but apparently for technical reasons we can't do it. There's a YouTube video of the late Barry Humphries arriving in the Royal Box at a performance, and I won't tell you what happens. Just plug in Barry Humphries YouTube Royal Box and it will come up, and it'll be the best 4 minutes of your life, maybe 3 minutes.
Give us a flavour. You've got to
No, I can't. I don't want to spoil it, because the
of course, Barry Humphries
punchline
is Dame Edna.
Dame Edna, yes. Dame Edna Royal Box. That's all you need, and it'll come up.
Right.
But just as a tribute to the most amazing, wonderful, kind, funny, fabulous, fabulous man. That's all.
Run out of adjectives.
Yeah, rest in
I
peace.
once made the mistake of sitting on the front row, well, the person who took me, of one of his performances, and you are absolutely in pole position for getting all the flack from Dame Edna on the stage.
And what was his character?
And from Les Patterson.
He used to spit a lot. Les, one
Oh,
of
Spit the dog. Patterson, yes, well, you get that.
I love Spit the Dog.
Les Patterson, the Australian...
Right, well,
he was a genius.
Finally, onto my supplement. It's a very happy 5th birthday to Prince Louis today. Now, this is, of course, from the Telegraph. A smiling Prince Louis has been photographed being pushed in a wheelbarrow by his mother ahead of his 5th birthday. Now, the photograph shows the young prince dressed in a blue woolen jumper. Bless his heart, isn't he sweet?
Yeah, he is sweet, isn't he?
Yeah,
Very
as the Princess of Wales pushes him. Yeah, bless him, his heart. Fine.
He's going to break some hearts, isn't he, in a few years' time?
He is, isn't he? They'll be like, I bagged a prince. No, you didn't. He's got somebody else.
Very good-looking lad, isn't he? Gets you. Well, he's got good-looking parents. His mother's very beautiful.
Yeah, and
William's
his grandparents, Catherine's parents, are both very good-looking.
Yeah, well, happy birthday to little Prince Louis. Right, well, I've got to say, on today's show, we've been asking, should ministers pick their own civil servants? According to our Twitter poll, 73% of you say yes and 27% of you say no. Right, I've got to say, a huge thank you to my panel. But first, Christine, I know that something very interesting has happened to you today, and what's been the outcome?
Well, I hope it hasn't showed to the viewers, but I arrived at the studio and realised that I hadn't got my handbag with me. So I have been in a complete blind panic for the last 2 hours, wondering what on earth I'd done with it. Unfortunately, about a quarter of an hour ago, we found it. But not only does it contain all the obvious things like wallet and etc., but also it's got a little jewellery pouch, which has not just my wedding ring, see none at all, an engagement ring, but I'm going to cry, my mother's engagement ring and my mother's wedding ring, and 3 little rings that my father made when he was a medical student out of dental fillings. And we're talking about, you know...
Sounds a bit grim, actually,
No,
Christine.
well, I'll show you them
next
Wednesday. But anyway, thank you to the Good Samaritan who's found it.
Oh, that's lovely. So there is a lot of great spirit in this country, so thank you so much to my wonderful panel, author and broadcaster, Christine Hamilton. Christine, thank you so much. It's been such a pleasure having you on board. And we couldn't tell at all. You did a sterling job. Yeah. You did. Thank you so much. And thank you so much to Danny Kelly.
Thank you,
Danny.
Resplendent in red, by the way.
Thank you.
Lady in red.
He always
says. Clash that I love.
The clash we love.
Best-looking TV presenter on GB News.
Well, thank you so much.
Absolutely.
Well, listen,
Not just GB News.
Well, listen, I've got to say a huge thank you to you as well for your company, as ever. Make sure you join me next week at 3 o'clock on Saturday. It's been such a pleasure. Have a fabulous, fabulous week. I look forward to seeing you then. We've got Free Speech Nation on the way. Take care.
Hello there, welcome to your latest weather update from the Met Office. I'm Jonathan Vautry. After a mixed setup throughout the weekend, we are going to retain that theme at least into the start of the new working week as well. Low pressure is still going to be with us into Monday, even though it's slowly drifting its way off to the east. It is allowing, though, a feed of northerly air to push its way in, so temperatures are going to be falling down for pretty much all of us. That will allow snow to fall over the Grampians and higher grounds of Scotland throughout Saturday night. Sleet to lower levels as well. Further rain for Northern Ireland, but generally across England and Wales, the showers will fade off a bit more, allowing some clearer intervals to develop, and a patchy frost is possible, particularly across some central areas of Scotland. The rain from Northern Ireland will shift its way into Wales and southwest England as we head throughout Monday morning, and then the cloud will build into central and southern areas of England later on into the afternoon. Some clearer, sunnier intervals for the northern half of the UK, but still with a scattering of showers, particularly in the north and the east, where they could still be wintry. It is going to be quite blustery across northern and eastern coasts throughout Monday, and feeling really quite chilly if you are exposed to that. Cold even underneath the persistent cloud further south as well. This rain then pushing its way through for Monday evening, so a damp end to the day, particularly across parts of Sussex and Kent, but eventually clearing its way off, and a number of clear intervals will develop into Monday night. That, though, is going to allow temperatures to really plummet, and we are expecting a much more widespread frost to develop and really quite a cold start to Tuesday morning. It does, though, mean that there'll be a good amount of sunshine to start off the day. And once that helps heat things up a bit more, it will be a relatively more pleasant day, particularly compared to Monday, with a good amount of sunny intervals for many. The wind's easing down in the east as well, but still a scattering of showers to contend with. The outbreaks of rain look to return as we move towards the middle part of the week, but temperatures will also be on the rise. Bye-bye.
Monday to Thursday nights on GB News. At 6, it's Dubes & Co. 7 o'clock, Farage. At 8, join Jacob Rees-Mogg. And at 9, Dan Wootton Tonight, followed by Headliners. On TV, radio and online. This is GB News.
First and foremost, I am a GB News fan, and I was before I was working here. Just love the fact that we're asking the questions that a lot of establishment media won't ask.
With a bit of a twist, we not only want to inform you, but we want to keep you entertained.
It's worth the drive because you get in and the team's all ready and waiting, they're itching to go, and it's a proper little family.
GB News is the people.